Good evening. Welcome. I hope y'all are having a nice, chill evening. I mean, I use the word chill, literal, like figurative here, not actually literal, but I imagine y'all are literally chilling now, considering how cold it actually is. But ignoring that, I hope y'all are doing absolutely swell. Yeah, we are continuing Mochi's story time today. Now, I do actually have a... I'm gonna do this a little bit differently this time. So we're gonna be starting it off with a fic that I've written instead of just switching to it. And then we're just gonna go back to Maze Crush afterward. I figure maybe this will help set the mood. Plus, I mean, I want to do it, so sue me. So how about we just hop right in, shall we? Sign in to confirm I'm not a bot. But I'm not a bot. Come on, man. I'm not a bot. Well, this is annoying. All right. We can fix this. We can fix this. I think. Well, okay then. We're gonna have to do this a different way. Yay. Thank you, YouTube, for being so helpful. Oh well, it's okay. It's okay. Hopefully you have to forgive me because I'm eating jerky. You know it. It's me eating jerky. Alright, now we'll just crop this.
You know what that means? Fish!
Fish! Hi, Orville. You know me so well, man. You know me so well. Yeah, you know me. Yeah, you know me so well that you have to like slap me a gazillion times. And hi, Aiden. How are you doing too? My two favorite people are here. My two favorite people from Mochi Storytime are here. Although, what happened to the... Something happened to the... the web thing. Oh, it's because I put it into this. Sorry, I'm having some technical difficulties because YouTube's being dumb and thinks I'm a bot. Oh, come on, let me... There we go, finally. You're one of my favorite people? Yeah! Unironically. Don't let it get to your head, though! No, totally let it get your head. Oh. Okay, here we go. Okay, so yeah, we're starting it off with a, one of my stories, and, yeah. I figured we do that, it'd be a nice mix-up from last time where we started with someone else's story and then, switch over to my own, And also, this is decidedly less stark than the other, so, Oh, gee. I just realized I have that open up in the wrong tab.
Boo! You stink!
I know I do. I know I do. But I'm doing great. Had a nap earlier, eating some jerky. Cuddled with the kitties all day, basically. They really wanted to sleep on my chest today. So, like, how can I just say no, I really just could not. Oh, not that one. Yeah, there we go. Wait, no. That's the wrong one. That's the right one. Okay, finally, dang. And look at that! And look at that! We got it working! Although, wait a minute. The alignment seems to be a little bit off. But you know what? It's fine. It's fine. This looks good. Gonna be mostly lurking today, playing Minecraft with the homies. Hey, that sounds good! Hey, gotta have fun playing with the homies. And hey, Minecraft is always fun, too. Alright. Okay, so we are gonna start this off with What You Are in the Dark. It is a story that I wrote for a contest a few years ago. Partly inspired by my own situation at the time. Because you know the old writer's mantra of write what you know and all that? Well, I certainly did that. But yeah, there was an Advanceshipping fanfic contest, and this was my entry for it. This was 4 years ago, so a little bit dated, but we'll still do what we can. Okay, here we go. Like clockwork, at 10 o'clock on the dot, I was started awake with a sharp pain in my chest and stomach. I sharply inhaled to catch my breath again before looking up in the dark room to see myself face to face with a grouchy-looking blue Pokémon whose nose was mere inches from mine. In her impatience, she jumped on top of me, the little rascal. I didn't dare to move, partially because I was still too sleepy and just a bit too chilled to want to pull the covers off, but also because forcing a Pokemon that cute off of you is almost a moral sin in itself. Fortunately, she yapped at me and dashed off the bed and down the stairs to the kitchen before I had to make the unthinkable decision to make her get off. No doubt that she was waiting in front of her food bowl and grew too impatient to show proper etiquette. Glaceon always took it upon herself to wake up if my alarm, normally set for 9, didn't succeed earlier. Well, in last night's case anyway, I simply forgot to set it. It was just one of those nights, I suppose. Since it all started, it was difficult even knowing the time of day, given the shuttered window mandate. My sleep schedule, needless to say, was also way out of sorts. My circadian rhythm couldn't be depended upon, so I guess all I could do was rely on my Pokemon's own stomach. It took a moment for the wind to return to my lungs before tripping onto the floor and limping down the stairs to follow, taking care to not miss a step and have another unfortunate spill. I let loose my tight grip on the handrail when I was sure I reached the bottom, flipped the light switch, and sure enough, after turning the corner, I saw both her and Pikachu looking in my direction expectantly, both of their dishes empty. All right, I said, resigned. Sustenance is on the way. I could feel their gazes downgraded just a simmer after opening the cabinet to pull out what was once a heavy bag of Pokémon food, now sadly a pathetic shell of its former self. They both looked at it hungrily just the same. I brought it over and poured what I could, but after a couple seconds of the sound of small pebbles hitting porcelain filling the room, the bag was finally emptied of its contents. I tossed the useless bag into the overflowing trash bin, and it was only then I realized how little food it actually was. It was only enough to barely fill a single bowl. I scowled at the meager helping inside. I guess this is all that we have for now. Glaceon and Pikachu also sighed. They would just have to share the food until more came in. Curious, I myself went to the refrigerator to look over the inventory. Cursory glance didn't reveal any better news. Only a half-eaten bag of baby carrots remained among the near-emptied bottles of ketchup and mayo. I forlornly snatched the bag and started munching while the two Pokemon took their turns taking a couple of bites of their own food. The carrots were getting pale and dried out, and despite how decent enough they still were to eat, I remembered why this bag stood alone among all the rest of the items that were once in the refrigerator to remain half-eaten over the past couple of weeks. It reminded me too much of just how good food used to be before it happened. After only a small handful went down the hatch, I quickly put the bag in the refrigerator and weakly headed to the couch to lie down. I wish I hadn't eaten anything that morning, since all I could think of then was blue skies, in-house ramen, gentle breezes, ice cream, and actual human interaction. I didn't even want to imagine what it would be like if I didn't have Glaceon and Pikachu with me either. I remember growing angry then and there as I bitterly remembered the day it all started. It was on stage in a contest battle. The air was filled with sparks, confetti, and cheers. Positive energy. My opponent and I locked eyes with matching confident smirks as we each belted out one attack after the other. Mixed in the sound of the crowd were what sounded like cheers for my own Pokemon, and others for his, all of them contributing to the overall chaos provided by this free pyrotechnic light show. But amidst the embers and droplets alike, where I could only imagine to be a hidden specter haunting the contest hall. It floated around, waiting to find the one person to possess and herald the coming of the apocalypse. Of course, it wasn't a real ghost or even a Pokemon looking to cause trouble, at least not that any I knew of anyway. It didn't even hide in the shadow. It wasn't so much the shadow it took refuge in, but the light. Is this truly a Mochi stream? Is that the real big Mochi? Yes, it is, Yubi! How is you? How are you doing, Yubi? Oh yeah, I should probably do shoutouts, shouldn't I? I forgot to do that again. There, y'all get shoutouts. You get a shoutout, you get a shoutout, you get a shoutout. Yes, I'm doing well.
That was a nice pass.
Just, had a nap today, eating jerky.
And I was almost 3 seconds.
This is a darn good batch of jerky. I mean, let's say.
That was a nice pass.
Hmm.
Oh my lord. Damn, where's Pika at when I need him?
Yeah, where is Pika at when you need him? I agree. Currently reading Onyx Storm by Rebecca Yarros. Ooh, what kind of story is that? What's that about? Thanks for the shout out. Of course, gotta shout out the homies. And y'all are homies. Y'all are streaming homies. Except Orville. I don't think Orville streams. Fantasy and romance. Oh, let's go. My kind of stuff. He ended up cutting and clutching, getting it for you. Oh, let's go. Apparently, where is Pika when you need him? Always there, right next to you. That's some spicy scenes in the series, and this is the 3rd book. Okay, and there's gonna be 2 more after this one? Oh boy, that's exciting. How long has it been going on? Because I have not heard of it before. Maybe I should check it out sometime. I was taking a break from things at the moment because she wrote the first 3 back to back. Okay, yeah, understandable. burnout is a real thing, especially among creative types. So if she needs to take a break, she really should take a break. Yeah. Hopefully she gets all the rest she can, so that, you know, she can write the best story, the best continuations that she can. But speaking of continuations, let us continue. Let me backtrack a little bit here. Of course, it wasn't a real ghost or even a Pokemon looking to cause trouble. At least not any that I knew of anyway. It didn't even hide in the shadow. It wasn't so much the shadow that it took refuge in, but the light. Arcanine! Commanded my opponent with an outstretched hand gloved in satin. Sunny day! The fiery Pokemon acquiesced to the order and let out a howl that somehow drowned out even the noisiest of spectators. The glass dome above then shined with a piercing intensity like light through a prism, complete with bands of colors strewn across the aisles. The air grew hot, and the Pokemon himself glowed as though a light from an inferno erupting behind him. Normally, I would have handled this just like any other moment and used some sort of other attack to use the intense sunlight to my advantage. However, the panicked cries I heard from the audience broke my concentration. The embers died down, giving me the opportunity to see more clearly, and I heard it. Howls of agony. It was the sort of sound I would have expected from a Golbat having its wing amputated. The only Pokemon in the hall at the moment were my opponents and my own. The sound, whatever it was human. Among that sound was the sight of bodies falling like dominoes, the majority of which being in the far left corner of the back, but there were a few others spread throughout. Among that sight was the smell of cooked meat. Or was it burning plastic? To this day, I still can't quite pin it down. The spectators that fell and screamed, by the way, they were burning. All of them. They weren't on fire or anything like my first thought would have been, but the burns on their skin made it all too apparent that something was happening. Was there an acid spill? I mean, that's unlikely. Why would they have allowed people in carrying acid? I guess a Pokemon could have done that, but again, there were no other Pokemon out but mine and my opponents. Unless they were hidden somewhere, but I wrote out that option too. Within seconds, the rest of the spectators who could still move scrambled out of the building in a stampede that I swear was only the stuff of disaster movies. All I could do was stand and watch as people got trampled just to flee. I wanted to get out of there myself. My feet were cemented to the stage, and I wasn't sure whether the extreme burns or the trampling was a worse fate to suffer. What happened after that was mostly a blur to me. Probably a side effect of the adrenaline. But I do recall a gentleman leading me and a couple others out with minimal injuries after I was literally shaken out of my stupor. After that was when the worldwide panic started as this strange phenomenon spread. It was first reported here in Kanto, and then spread to Johto and my home region of Hoenn in only a day. It wasn't long before the distant Unova and Alola regions had cases. Part of the problem, of course, was that no one had any idea what was causing it. Was it a virus? A fungus? Maybe it was just a genetic defect that made people far too sensitive to the sun? It would take months before any of these questions were answered in greater detail. They said it would take even longer for some sort of treatment to be developed. And so that's when they introduced public safety measures while they figured out what was happening. Stay indoors, avoid other people, and most importantly, avoid any contact with sunlight. The events of the months since had also been a blur, but for completely different reasons. The bulk of which primarily being due to them looking pretty much the exact same day after day. Sure, the first few weeks were the most memorable by far, by virtue of life itself seemingly coming to a halt, made worse by the fact that the mandate of boarding the windows shut sharply curtailed any sense of time I didn't even realize I had before I lost it. This is horrifying, by the way. Good! That means it's working! And it means it can make it so much better or worse. Yeah, baby! That's why I do it! That's why I do it! I love having this effect on people. Yeah, you can probably tell, like, from what events I pulled the inspiration for the story out. You could probably tell. Sorry, jerky in my mouth. But now, I just got used to it all. It's almost amazing how adaptable humans can be, were it not for how scary the overlying circumstances were and how necessary it was to adapt to them, or else. But man, I really missed everyone. Due to the lockdown, it was rare to see anyone who wasn't on a screen of some kind, be it a television or a phone call. The former just made life borderline unbearable for me, as I had to deal with constantly seeing laid bare the sheer stupidity of people completely foregoing basic cautionary measures. So, I made it a point to rely only on the latter for any social contact. I turned to my side as I peered at the digital clock and waited excitedly for the numbers to change. I still felt somewhat ill from hunger, but I craved for some sort of stimulation nevertheless, even if it was something as banal as watching paint dry. Just then, though, I fell off the couch, startled, when a loud ring came from the door. I heard the pitter-patter of small paws scraping across the hardwood floors towards the source of the sound as I painfully pulled myself up and rubbed my shoulder. I didn't spend long tending to myself, lest I make our guest impatient, so I shuffled through the kitchen to the front door and turned on the door camera. The monitor flashed on, and I shielded my eyes as they adjusted to seeing the first vision of Pallet Town's sunlight in days, however artificial it was. From the safety of the house, I glanced at the sky and saw a shade of blue that I had missed dearly, and the ground was still damp from what sounded like rain earlier in the morning. But instead of a clear view of the area like I normally saw when I just wanted to get a glance at how the outside world was still holding up, a bright figure took up most of the screen real estate. He was cloaked in white and was wearing a dark UV mask. As such, his identity was completely unrecognizable. Or it would be, were not for what he said into the microphone at that moment. "Hey, MA," said a familiar voice. "It's been a while." "Oh, Ash!" I yelped back, trying my best to not make my enthusiasm too obvious, while simultaneously horrified that he would see me in such an unkempt state. "I thought you were supposed to be in Viridian City this week," I said, while trying in vain to make my bedhead more presentable. Ash took a white-gloved hand and rubbed the back of his head, as sheepishly as one could while clad in armor. "I got kind of worried about you guys. I knew you guys were low on food." He held up a couple of plastic bags containing what looked like produce and actually filled boxed goods. He seemed especially proud when he pulled a pack of ramen out of the bag and waggled it in front of the camera as if it were some kind of excited puppy expecting a treat. Or as if I were some kind of excited puppy expecting a treat. Which, to be fair, I kind of was. I knew it wasn't the real thing, but instant noodles were vastly better than nothing at all, and so I couldn't help but clap in excitement. You could say that. I was beginning to find the empty boxes in here appetizing. We shared a laugh for a moment, but everything then grew awkwardly silent when it was clear that we were both out of topics for small talk. It was very weird. We hadn't seen each other much since I was allowed to room at his mother's house while she was in the hospital for that same burning illness, or for lack of a better descriptor, and yet we didn't have much to say. Ash himself couldn't stay with me, since he was one of the emergency workers who had been delivering groceries and other necessities. The lack of his presence was particularly distressing, and so I begged for him to stay, but he wouldn't have any of it. It was just like him, stubborn to a fault, even at the risk of his own safety. It frustrated me, but at the same time, it was one of the things I loved about him, you know? After a couple of minutes of us just standing by the door, waiting for the other to say something, Ash finally broke the silence. "So, how are you and the gang holding up?" "Well, Glacion's been a little rambunctious lately," I said as I glanced in her direction. She didn't seem to care much, preferring to instead aloofly stare at her tail. Pikachu, on the other hand, has been quite well behaved. Yellow Mouse cooed with delight on my shoulder as I scratched behind his ear. I can only imagine that Ash was watching us with envy underneath that mask, judging by his sad laughter. "Hey, buddy. Are you treating May well?" Pikachu answered in the affirmative with a salute, and I vouched for his character. He saved us from a couple of pinches when the power went out the other day. The electricity kept our food from spoiling for 2 hours straight. For a moment, I was afraid Pikachu was going to fall off my shoulder in a display of exhaustion, so I instinctively held my arm up to keep his balance. Poor guy had to sleep for the rest of the day after that, and it was clear that the memory of the exertion was still fresh. "Wow, I'm impressed," Ash said in praise, crossing his arms. "I'm glad to hear you guys have the fort held down just fine." Just then, though, his arms loosened and fell to his sides, and his posture hunched over a bit as though he was staring at the ground. The sadness that was present in his voice earlier was now on full display, and I was almost glad his mask at his face. Seeing tears hit the ground would surely be too much for me to bear. He sighed. "I'm sorry. Times are hard, you know?" I understood that all too well. It was hard enough being cooped up in the dark for months on end, having to pop vitamin D tablets to make up for the lack of sun. But having to deliver constantly without anyone to keep him company had to have been worse. At least it's something that would cause me to break. Also, thank you for the posture check, Yubi. I don't know if I said that. Was it a certain something that happened 5 years ago? Yeah, it was a certain something, yes. It was jaundice. Yeah, it was the outbreak of jaundice. Yeah, for sure. Smile. I assured him that it was all right and tried to change the subject, falling silent when it was obvious I couldn't do so beyond meaningless chewing of the fat. I was afraid that my own sadness was becoming evident, even. To my dismay, I think he noticed, considering what he said next. Listen, May, I think we need to address the mammoth swine in the room. My heart sank, and I fidgeted with my ring nervously. Sure, what's up? Yep, I couldn't hide my fear at all. Great. You know there are talks that the lock... Wrong song! You know there are talks that the lockdowns will be extended a few more months, right? I nodded. They still haven't discovered a treatment, have they? Nope, he replied, shaking his head. So that means January will come and go without us being able to guarantee our guests' safety. It's getting to the point where we need to talk about postponing it. I knew there had to be a catch to him showing up unannounced. Leave it to the universe to dangle something good in front of my face, only to have something happen to corrupt any sort of happiness it brought me. And no, I'm not just referring to the Daemon, thank you very much. My vision blurred as I stared into space and tried to process the reality of what was being discussed before bringing my hands to my face seconds later. I was frustrated, distraught. And yet all I could vocalize was the pathetic whimper that amounted to nothing more than a, yes, I agree. I'm still not exactly sure if that's what it came out as from Ash's perspective, but the conversation continued as if that's what it was, nevertheless. I don't want this either, he said, probably in an attempt to ease my incoming breakdown. I've been looking forward to this day ever since we met, and it makes me feel powerless to see it not getting any closer no matter how long we wait. But know that the day will come when our life continues where it left off. I stuttered as I tried to get the words from my lips, which started trembling with the same sort of despair and sorrow that just took hold of Ash. I know he was just putting on a brave face, well, figuratively speaking, of course, to make me feel better, but his optimism rang hollow in the face of my cynicism. What if the day never comes, Ash? I asked pointedly, not even bothering to hold up the facade anymore. What if we'll be forced to stay locked up forever? What if we can no longer go out into the sun and enjoy each other's company again? The question pierced the armor that his relatively sunny outlook provided. I knew he had to have been wondering the same thing deep down. Everyone on the planet was. If he wasn't, I would have simply assumed he was just being naive or, worse, delusional. I had to admit, though, that I found some solace in the fact that he wasn't divorced from reality outright. Ash sighed again, unsure how to answer that. Alright, you got me. His tone seemed to imply that he was tacking on, "You happy?" at the end of it. I certainly didn't feel happy being agreed with, in all honesty. I was hoping for at least some plausible deniability, some treatment or some vaccine or something. But now I was convinced that it was mostly wishful thinking. So, I whispered, twirling the ring above my finger again absentmindedly with a blush on my face. Sorry. Sorry, it's hard to find the right tab for this one. So, I whispered, pulling the ring around my finger again, absent-mindedly with a blush on my face. Stay with me. Let's have it early, without guests. He stood there for a moment, although it was difficult to tell whether it was due to pensiveness or simply due to the impact of the suggestion. Perhaps he too was blushing furiously under his mask. A curiosity that, to this day, I still regret not confirming for myself. Ash coughed nervously and instinctively put his hand behind his head again. Well then, I giggled hearing the cute vulnerability in his voice. As much as I like the idea, I don't know. My laughter died down and was replaced once more with discouragement. Why not? I miss you dearly, so yes, I want to be with you again. But I would never forgive myself if I exposed you and the others, especially Glaceon. I know you're only inside due to the lockdown and not because you're actually infected, but I'm a different story. He pulled back his sleeve to reveal a severe burn mark on his forearm, careful to ensure that it was wholly umbrellaed by his shade, before putting the sleeve back on again shortly afterward. I don't want to expose you, and I also must ensure that you and the others are fed as much as I can. He then turned away from the screen in embarrassment. Besides, I want to see you in a dress. That, I think, was what I would consider the most memorable moment of the whole lockdown. The comment came so out of left field for me that I was doubled over laughing, almost completely forgetting my pain. I startled Glaceon and forced her to zip away indignantly, but I didn't pay it any heed. I would apologize to her later. Instead, I kept laughing. Of course, someone so innocent like he would want something so traditional, even in the face of a deadly pandemic. Far be it for me to deny those sorts of simple pleasures in the face of adversity. And to be honest, I wanted the same thing. It's also surprisingly hard to get a dress when everything non-essential is closed for business, so I guess that would indeed have to wait. Thank you, Ash, I finally said after taking a moment from the non-stop laughter in order to breathe. You really know how to keep things in perspective. Again, the mask made it impossible to be sure, but I'd like to imagine that he gave me one of those Ash grins I love so much. I mean, that's why you said yes to me, right? I gave him a wry smile. Well, it definitely wasn't for your experience in romance. We both shared a genuine laugh once more, and like that, the cloud of doubt shrouding us had been dispelled, and there was no longer an awkward moment for the rest of the conversation. We then spent a long time talking about this and that, minor stuff really, but it was still nice being distracted from everything. In all, I was glad we had the talk. It reminded me that sometimes the world really was cold and heartless, and there was only so much that blind idealism would fix. The rest of it had to be handled through hard work, and we both had to keep doing our parts until it ended. He was right. It was hard to always keep my mind from regressing back to despair, but it would end. Maybe not in a few months, but there would come a time when it would be safe to go outside again. I already had the mental plan of what I would do when the time came. It would probably involve going to every restaurant, enjoying all the different types of food I could. To be it apart from other people, of course. After nearly an hour had passed, Ash peered at his Pokédex to check the time and jumped when he realized just how much of it had crept up on us. Oh shoot, I'm gonna be late for the next delivery. I'm sorry to cut this short. I myself realized just how much time had passed when I felt the soreness in my feet. And legs from standing so much. I swear it was ages since I had a conversation that good. The amount I missed it was stark. Still, I knew that all good things had to end eventually, especially since I had to make sure to put the food in the refrigerator before it spoiled. After Ash placed the groceries into the drop box and I subsequently stowed it away safely, he turned to leave. Hey Ash, I called out before he can get out of earshot from the admittedly soft speakers. He stopped and slightly turned, expecting me to say something. I wanted to deliver something on the scale of an epic, perhaps to make sure he could stay until nightfall so I could actually see him in person. But all I could really come up with at the top of my head was, I love you. He chuckled contently. I love you too, May. Don't worry, we'll be together soon. And then he set off onto the road until his white clothing was no longer visible, and so I then turned off the monitor. Alone, once more. I turned away from the door and plopped myself on the couch again. I was feeling a bit better with some of my appetite now gone somehow, and so I was able to reflect on everything we had discussed with a newfound vigor. The digits on the clock I was staring at earlier, now we're at 11:28. This time each day, I would lie on the couch and dream what it would be like to go outside and see people again. Today, though, I dreamed what our ceremony would be like, how my dress would look, and how good Ash would look in his tuxedo. But most of all, for this first time in a while, I felt hope again. And that's it! Yeah, it was a one-shot. It was a one-shot. Yeah, so... Yeah, it was partly inspired by my, situation. So, I was engaged at the time, and my fiance lived in a... Well, my now ex-fiance lived in another country, so, you know, like... Getting together for a wedding was very much out of the question there. So, yeah, you could... Yeah, you can imagine how, you know... how difficult that was! So yeah, yeah, that happened. But yeah, that was it. That was a one-shot that I wrote for a contest. So, you know. But yeah, but that was all Mochi. That was 100% Mochi, branded Mochi story telling, I guess. I don't know how else to market this. Really good. Well, thank you, Aiden. Thank you. 100 out of 10. Oh, let's go. I'm taking that with high praise. I'm taking that high praise, like, in stride, man. Ah, it feels good. Thank you, Aiden. Thank you. I'd like to thank the Academy and my friends and my family and my ex-fiance. Anyway. Ah. Sorry, still eating jerky. I should go into doing this for real and also like being the reader of audiobooks. You think so? I don't know. I feel like I don't feel like I don't have the best voice differentiation for it. But then again, I have seen. Then again, there have been like audiobook readers that don't have the most voice differentiation except for like maybe one or two characters, but like they still made it very engaging. So I don't know. Maybe I should. But yeah, that was that fanfic. Now how's about we switch over to the other one we were reading? Back to, like before they got engaged. And also to answer your question, Aiden. Can Pokemon get affected as well, or is it just people? I implied that it was both could be affected. Or at the very least, that the risk was high enough of it becoming zoonotic. And, jumping species that, I imagine they would have taken that risk seriously as well. So, it was, That's what made Glaceon such a perfect choice for that, because ice type, ice types being weak to fire, So I imagine for ice type Pokemon it would be especially deadly. Must have missed that at the beginning of the story. No, I didn't actually say it outright. The only hint that could be passed on to Pokemon was Ash saying, I didn't want to infect you, especially Glaceon either. So no, you actually didn't really miss anything, honestly. Trying to listen to chat with your buddy at the same time, it does make sense. No, it's okay. Hey, you're already listening a lot more than you probably should be, considering that you're playing with a bud, But okay, we are going to be switching gears once more. To May's crush once again. Yeah! I'm excited! So freaking excited as always. Now, so last time, wow, quite a few things happened last time. So for those who don't remember, last time, I really should just have ChatGPT summarize what happened so far. If I could just get everything into it, but that would take too long, so I'm just gonna do it myself. So what happened last time was, groups traveling to the battle pyramid. Everyone finds out that May has a crush on somebody, and then two people, namely Drew and Ash, confess their love for May, so she is she has a crush on two boys now, and it's it's a weird love, it's a vexing love triangle of sorts. And then Team Rocket came and took Pikachu and actually also kidnapped May too, and then they all broke out, but then Ash got injured while rescuing May, and now they're lost in the wilderness, kind of. And yeah, that's where we are. There, perfect, absolutely professional, summarizing by yours truly. DBZ announced his voice. Last time on May's Crush, May has assignment between two bachelors who want to be with her, but while they're fighting for her affection, Team Rocket comes in to ruin the show. Aiden, you do this so much better than I do. Why can't you? You should be the DBZ. You should be the DBZ announcer voice. That's so much better! Ah. But okay. So yeah, so now we are on chapter 7, Camp Out. So YouTuber stuff coming out. Hey, we love to see it. More of that, please. Can you teach me how to do that? I could use that. I could use that sort of energy. Anyway, here we go. Hey May, Ash called to her. She snapped out of her thoughts and saw that she and Ash stood in a small clearing in the middle of the forest. The sky had turned orange as the sun set behind the trees. I think this would be a good time to start setting up camp. We need to make sure we don't overdo it. She looked over at Ash. He still hadn't put on a shirt, but the bandana had seemed to be dry, having been wrung out and worn by Ash's body heat. She herself, on the other hand, was still wearing her wet clothes. Ash sat against a tree and turned her. Probably need to get a fire going so we can cook some food, he said with a smile. What food? Didn't you bring anything? I didn't think I was gonna get extended by Team Rocket, so I didn't plan for an extended trip. May shouted, annoyed at his question. Ash looked at her, surprised. She realized what had happened and looked at her feet. I'm sorry, I didn't mean it. It's all right, Ash said, comforting her. Today's been a rough day. Both need a good night's sleep. He then turned to Pikachu and asked, "Hey buddy, could you get into my stuff and get out the food I bought?" Pikachu hopped off, as requested, off May's shoulder to the spot on the ground where she had put down Ash's pack. He nimbly unzipped the smaller pocket, pulled out a small sealed package of potato chips. Ash laughed when he brought it out. I was gonna snack on that after I woke up while I waited for the rest of you guys, you know, before the whole Drew and Team Rocket thing happened. May turned to her pack and rummaged through it. Pokeblock case, my ribbon case, my stuff. She quickly hid it, but with no food in sight, she whimpered. Hey May, you want some? Ash asked her. She turned to him. He had already opened the bag and taken a few chips for himself. He held it out in his hand, offering her his food. She slowly took it from his hand and took a solitary chip from the bag. She nibbled on it slowly, turning to look at Pikachu, who had opened his can of Pokemon food and was eating happily. May's stomach let out an audible growl. You can eat more if you want, Ash told her, smiling. Grateful, she took a few more chips out of the bag and ate them. Do you want any more? She asked. He shook his head, saying, You're not as used to traveling without food as I am. You'll need that to keep your strength up. He then asked Pikachu to pass him his canteen, and the Pokemon obliged. Ash drank the water within, as May got her own and took a drink. It was getting dark, so May went searching for some firewood. Pikachu stayed with the then-injured Ash, who hummed a quiet song to himself, or at least he thought it was quiet. He was humming quite loudly, in fact, so May enjoyed the music as she walked around the campsite, gathering wood. When she thought she had gathered enough, she began walking back to set up a campfire like she had seen Brock do so many times before. Brock, she thought. She was worried about her friend and her brother. They were probably at the Pokemon Center worried about her and Ash, just as she and Ash had worried about them. She picked up one more stick and headed back into the campsite. Ash calmly stroked Pikachu's yellow fur, and having neither the rocks nor the expertise, May resorted to the combustion to light the fire. After recalling her starter, she sat across from Ash and began talking about various things, like more of his adventures before he met her, about the things he did when he was in Kanto the first time, his adventures in the Orange Islands, his Johto journey, anything to take her mind off her current situation. Oh, oops. I hit the wrong keyboard combination. In the middle of a story about an old pilot and his octowl, Ash asked me, Do I make you feel uncomfortable? What? What do you mean? Oh, well, Ash blushed. You know how I feel. About you, Ash said, stuttering up. Oh. May blushed herself. She had all but forgotten about what had happened between them just a day ago. It's surprising, I guess, she started. Only now she didn't have anywhere to take it. I mean, I didn't expect you to pour it out like that. In a way, though, I'm glad. If you didn't say anything, I may have taken Drew's offer. Drew's offer? Ash said, curious. Pikachu's ears also perked up. Well, May blushed heavier. Drew asked me if I would travel with him instead of you. Ash swallowed loud enough for May to hear. And what did you tell him? He didn't give me a chance to answer, she continued. Then you and Pikachu popped up and you spilled the beans to me, and then I got all sorts of confused. Ash let out a sigh of relief. Have you decided if you wanted to go with him yet? He asked her. May looked into the fire for a moment. No, that is, I haven't decided yet. I guess I like Drew, but I also like... May had only just then noticed the trap that she had planted for herself, but she managed to dodge it before falling into it, if only barely. Traveling with you guys. I mean, if it wasn't for you, Ash, I probably wouldn't even be a Pokemon coordinator. What do you mean? He asked her. Didn't the Rustboro contest convince you to be one? Yeah, but to be honest, May began telling him the secrets she had kept from Brock. I didn't even really like Pokemon at first. My dad being a gym trader, they had always seemed to be taking up his time. When he became Petalburg gym leader, I almost never saw him. I just went to Professor Birch's that day to get a Pokemon so that Dad would be happy with me. She looked at the stars and sighed. But what I really wanted to do was travel the world. I wanted to go to places I'd never been, see all sorts of sights. My Pokemon would just be along for the ride. She turned her head to Ash. But then I met you. I remember when you were looking out for Pikachu near Little Root Town. Both of them looked at Pikachu, who had long by then curled up near the fire, sleeping. You were so worried about him. I remember watching you stay up all night with him, make sure he got better. I saw her mouth got dry, so she swallowed some saliva and continued. How you loved, and it rubbed off on me. I wanted to be someone who could love like you could. She then smiled at him. I wanted Torchic and me to be as close as you and Pikachu. She then got depressed, though, and looked away. But I kept messing up. I couldn't tell Torchic what to do, and she was always getting into trouble. She looked at Ash again. But you believed in me. You were always there like a safety net. Always ready to give advice when I needed it. Always ready to save me when I needed it. Always looking out for me. She then realized that she was babbling. I just don't know when to be quiet, do I? She said with a laugh. Ash laughed too. Well, I'm glad I could be such a good influence on you, May. I know how Brock and Misty felt when they saw me become a good trainer. His gaze narrowed, but you still haven't answered the original question. Do I make you feel uncomfortable? Oh, she thought. That question. No, not at all, she told him. I know you, Ash, and I know you'd never do anything to people you love. But like I said, I haven't been able to give it much thought. She looked into the fire. I was hoping to see one of you look really bad in the battle earlier today, she admitted. But both of you had my best interest in mind, so I guess I know now that I have to face this question on my own. A sharp wind blew through the campsite, threatening the fire. May once again was reminded that she was wearing wet clothes. She stuttered loudly. Hey, May? Ash asked her, do you want to change into some of my dry clothes? May blushed. What? Your clothes? It's gonna get cold and you could get sick if you spend the night in wet clothes like that. I have some dry clothes in my pack. I know I need a dry shirt and pants, he explained. And don't you wear just a big yellow shirt when you sleep? And don't you just wear a big yellow shirt when you sleep anyway? But it's your clothes! It wouldn't be right. Whoa, chill down, May, he said with a smile. It's not like you have to live in them. Besides, you're gonna let your clothes dry overnight, so you can change back before we get moving again. May let out a muffled growl. It's just an offer anyway. The choices of being cold or being warm, May chose to be warm. Okay, but you better not look when I change, she warned him, half-jokingly. I won't. I'll be busy trying to get a shirt on and a dry pair of pants. May opened his pack and pulled out 2 shirts and a pair of pants. She tossed one shirt and the pants in Ash's direction and proceeded into the forest until she was sure he couldn't see her. It was for principle only, though. She knew Ash wasn't like that. He wouldn't try to look at her naked. Teenage boy he was, but he respected his friends. He wouldn't sneak up on her while she was changing. She heard a loud, boyish growl from the campsite. Ash was apparently having trouble changing as well. She undressed down to her underwear, placing her wet clothes in a pile. May knew that all of her other underwear was wet, so she had to keep the pair she had on. She did, however, remove her bra. She placed it on the pile neatly. I was expecting to feel vulnerable, but instead felt oddly normal. The only other human around for miles was Ash, and he would never sink as to see her naked. She put on the shirt he had borrowed from him and looked the same as his other shirts. Plain black, except for an orange stripe across the midsection. Except the midsection was where her chest was. May sighed, hoping not to draw attention to herself from him, seeing as she wasn't wearing a bra anymore anyway. The shirt was large on her, as the boy had predicted, and it covered her underwear completely. She grabbed her clothes and walked in her shoes without socks back to the campsite. Ash was more mobile than she had given credit for. In the time she had taken to change, Ash had set up a clothesline, hung his wet clothes on it, and set up his sleeping bag, where May was sitting before. Ash had moved back to the tree he was leaning against all that time and was waiting for her to return. He was wearing his black shirt and his baggy blue pants. Here, he said to her, to complete the illusion. He tossed his red and black cap at her. She caught in her hands and looked at him. Seeing the insistence in his eyes, she put it on. Even May couldn't pass the opportunity up. Go, Sceptile, she ordered. Use Bullet Seed! May and Ash let out a laugh. She turned to the clothesline and set her clothes alongside. And she was worried that Ash might say something when he saw her pin up her bra, but no words exited his mouth to her relief. Well, it's getting late, Ash said to her. We'd better get to sleep. You don't know how long it's going to take for us to find everyone else. Where are you going to sleep? May asked him, obviously curious about the sleeping bag. Right here, he asked. Right here, he answered dumbly, indicating the area he was sitting in. Then why is your sleeping bag over here? She asked him. It's for you to use since yours is wet. Nuh-uh, she said, wagging her finger at him. I'm not going to let you play the hero all the time, Ash Ketchum. She picked out the bag and unzipped it. It unzipped until his blanket-like in form. She walked over to Pikachu and picked him up. The drowsy Pokemon was as confused as Ash was. May stepped in front of him, dropped Pikachu in his lap, and sat down next to him. May then tossed the blanket over Ash and herself, covering the three of them. He then pulled the blanket off his head, though. What are you doing? We're sharing this, so neither of us gets cold, May said, snorting at him. Oh, okay. Ash yawned. Normally he would argue back, but it was far too late. Good night, May. He pulled a yellow mass of fur out from under the cover. Good night, Pikachu. He then hugged his buddy, placed him in his lap, and leaned on the tree and quickly fell asleep. Pikachu followed suit, yawning loudly, then curling back and going to sleep himself. May looked at Ash's face. It looks so peaceful, she thought. I kind of like his hair. She startled. The thought of that startled her, though. She gently ran her fingers through his hair, messing it up further. She found herself liking the look even more. It looks so wild, she thought, but the boy under it is nothing like that. It's kind, caring, and loyal to a fault. Protective, brave, and wise. I love you, Ash Ketchum, she heard herself whisper. She was worried that he had heard her, but this fear quickly was destroyed when he began to snore. Typical Ash, she thought. She stretched her arms and placed one along his chest, and then placed her head along his shoulder and quickly fell asleep. Also, what do cats say online shopping? They prefer catalogs. Ayo! Yeah, don't worry, Orville, I'm still reading chat. I'm still reading chat. All right, Chapter 8, Campaign. Are you gonna be all right, May? Ash asked her, loosely running his fingers through her brown hair. Uh-huh. She snuggled her head against his lap. She was just content to lie there, having him stroke her. You're gonna have to get up eventually, he reminded her. I don't wanna. All right, you don't have to. Thanks. She turned her head around and looked up at him. Ash then lowered his face to hers and puckered his lips. May closed her eyes, waiting for him. But then her eyes were open. It was mid-morning. She sat up and tried to make sense of what had been going on. She looked down and found that she was wearing Ash's shirt, and the events of the previous night slowly crept into her memory, as well as the events of the previous day. Max, she whispered to herself. Her brother still didn't know where she was. She began to look around the campsite, and the fire had long since gone out. It wasn't even smoldering anymore. Ash, his backpack, and Pikachu had disappeared. Across from where the fire would have been, a large reptilian Pokemon stared back at her. His yellow eyes clearly watched her as he moved the twig about his mouth. Ash had left Sceptile to guard her while she slept, apparently. She was slightly intimidated by Ash's fully evolved Pokemon, but she was glad someone was watching her. Ash must have gone in search of food or water or something, she thought. She decided that this was as good a time as any to get dressed in her regular clothes. She ordered Sceptile to turn around as she got dressed, and the forest Pokemon reluctantly agreed. She quickly dressed herself, but when it came time to put on her bandana, she remembered tearing it in half to bandage Ash's wounds. She sighed, but something red caught her eye near the sleeping bag turned blanket. Ash had left his hat there. She figured that she had worn it last night, so she might just place it on her head. I'll give it back when I find him, she thought. You can turn around again, she told Sceptile. The grass type turned back to face the campsite. Do you know which way Ash went? She asked him. Sceptile! He pointed the direction behind her. The trees were dense, but the sunlight filtered through the branches. But still, May didn't feel comfortable walking out that way on her own. Hey, Sceptile, come with me and let's go find Ash, she ordered him. Tile! The Pokemon refused. He was content to stay there. Are you saying that you'd rather let me wander the forest and get hurt? She asked him. But Sceptile caught her bluff. May glowered at him. He thinks he's got it all together, does he? Well, I guess I'm gonna have to test his reaction. Alright, I guess I'll go look for Ash on my own, she said, taunting him. I'm sure Combustion can protect me. Sceptile then knew he had no choice. He stood up and began to follow her. He eventually caught up to her and cursed her under his breath. She smiled devilishly, having played Sceptile like a well-tuned violin. They walked through the woods, not seeing very many wild Pokemon. May attributed that to Sceptile's intimidating appearance. She began to hear a familiar voice up ahead as they walked. She heard laughing cheers and also Pikachu's voice. Alright, crab hammer the next one, Corphish, Ash told his water type. Crustacean Pokemon slammed his glowing claw into the next tree. A handful of large, round berries fell from the branches. Each of them had green, peach-colored stripes. May looked to see Ash with Pikachu on his head looking very healthy. Ash had put on his hooded sweatshirt, but obviously wasn't wearing his hat. Pikachu scampered over to one of the berries and picked it up. Corphish, the small red water type, having felt he had done enough, smashed one of the berries open and began to eat the sweet inner portion. Don't tell me you're gonna eat without me, May asked Ash. He turned his head to see the girl wearing his hat, but her clothes. Sceptile stepped out of the woods behind her. Hey, May! Ash waved. I see you've woken up. He then turned to Sceptile. Thanks for watching over. He picked up one of the large berries and tossed it over to Sceptile, who caught the berry and began to eat it happily. I think the rest of our Pokemon need to eat too, May told him. Young Trader agreed, and they both reached at their belts and lobbed several Pokeballs into the air. From Ash's Pokeballs came the small purple Ipom, the nimble bird Pokemon Swellow, and a large gray Pokemon. He had a set of tusks on each side of his mouth. His long black nose stretched down and began to sniff around. Large ears sat atop his rather short body, and the tire-like pattern of his nose continued along his back, ending on his rear. Racer-like growths surround each of his short legs. This Pokemon ran past Ipom and began quickly eating. It's Great Tusk! I'm kidding. No, Donphan, wait for the others! Ash scolded his ground-type Pokemon. Donphan stopped and sighed. From May's Pokeballs came the chicken-like Buskin, a gluttonous Munchlax, and two more Pokemon. The first was a small turtle, stood on his hind legs, bouncing with his rounded tail. And other than their shell, which was brown on top and yellow on the bottom, the turtle was a light shade of blue. Next to him appeared a small, almost canine-like Pokemon. She was covered in brown fur from the tips of her long ears to the bottoms of her small feet, all except for a large, fluffy portion of fur around her neck. She had a fox-like tail that ended in the same pale white color that the fluff was. Her dark eyes lit up as she and the turtle Pokemon ran towards some fruit. The nimble Munchlax, however, had other plans, and began scooping up the fruit in his arms. May quickly brandished her Pokeball case and tossed a Pokeblock in a Munchlax's gaping mouth. The big eater swallowed the block and became bloated very quickly, dropping the berries back to the ground. May then turned to the other two Pokemon. Now, you two eat up, alright? May had walked over to them and rubbed the back of their heads. Eevee smiled and cooed under her touch, and Squirtle just laughed. May eyed the berry and opened her pack. Many of the items within, unfortunately, were ruined from the past day's events. She pulled out a booklet, its cover claiming extensive berry encyclopedia. The pages were hard and had begun to stick together. But nevertheless, she flipped to a page on the back of the book. She walked over to Ash and pointed at the picture. It says these are Watmill berries. They have a sweet taste to them. Ash picked up one of the large berries and broke it open on his knee. Placed the opened rind near his mouth and took a bite. Wow, said, blinking. That is pretty sweet. He handed the other half to May, who took it from his hand and took a bite. Yummy! She exclaimed. She and Ash turned to the Pokemon. They had begun eating their fill of the Watmill berries, with the smaller Pokemon filling up before their larger counterparts. Ash walked over to Ipom to ask Ipom if she was feeling better from the battle with Drew the other day. Even though the long-tailed Pokemon bounced on her tail with a wide grin on her face, May felt a pang of guilt. May looked down at her shoes and rubbed them in the dirt. Ash noticed and walked over to her. Is something the matter, May? He asked her, trying to look into her eyes. I still feel bad for having Ipom get hurt in that battle I got you and Drew to have, she admitted, not taking her gaze off her feet. Ash patted her shoulder and said nothing. He turned back to the Pokemon and watched them eat. He took the half of berry he had split earlier and continued to eat from it himself. May, however, sat down and leaned her head against his leg, also eating from the split berry. Yeah, Ash, May started. I wanted to apologize. For? Asked Ash. I didn't know what she was going to say. For getting you and Drew to fight over me. This is wrong for you to play with your emotions like that. Oh, boy. Okay, now I have to make a decision. Okay, I'm gonna flip a coin here. We're gonna see what happens. Oh, it's heads. Okay, so we're gonna be playing this song. I bet y'all are gonna get a kick out of this. I forgive you, May, he said, rubbing his hat over May's head. She looked up to see him smiling at her. But just then, she cracked a wry smile at him and smashed her half of the Watmill berry into his face. Ash wiped the pulp from his face and looked down at her. What was that for? He asked, his voice slightly irritated. May had leapt up and had taken some steps back. Guess you can't get me, she said, laughing at him. Ash wound up, throwing his arm, and tossed his half at May. She sidestepped the fruit, which fell harmlessly against the ground. She placed her hand on her mouth and looked at him. Did the great Ash catch a miss, a girl? She mocked him, trying to hide the laughter in her voice. Her mockery was cut off when Ash landed another half of her berry into her chest. May clutched it and kneeled down, having a sensitive body part struck and the wind knocked out of her. Ash, shocked, ran over to her. Are you okay? He asked her. Ash Ketchum, this means war! She shouted, taking the other half of the berry from Ash's hand and slamming into his face. The young trainers ran apart to find more berries. Each split them apart, May with more difficulty than Ash, and began to throw them at each other. When Ash had leaned over, May took the opportunity to hit him square in the head. The boy jumped and turned to the laughing girl, tossed one on her leg, causing her to fall over. She threw another Ash, only to have Ash's next assault catch in the air, splatting against each other. Ash followed up with another half. May ducked, having it take Ash's hat off her head. They both picked up one last piece and ran toward each other, holding out in front of them as if it were some kind of brute joust. Ash's longer arms won out in the end, and the fruit crashed into May's face. May's berry on the other hand splattered on Ash's chest. Ash pulled his hand and the emptied rind away from her face, only have May tackle him to the ground. Ash managed to force them into a roll, with May now having her back on the ground. She, however, was able to use the momentum made by Ash to continue rolling, placing them back with her back on top. She placed her hand on Ash's forearms, pinning him to the ground, preventing any further escape attempts. The boy was at her mercy. Her legs straddled his stomach. A fearful look overcame his eyes. A smirk appeared across her face. They stared into each other's eyes for a moment. Both subjects were sticky from the berry juice. Dirt had stuck to both their faces, and May had felt her heartbeat quicken. She flipped herself off Ash and laid on the ground next to him instead. So who won? Ash asked her after a moment. I think it was a draw. Using Swirl's water gun as a makeshift fountain, Ash and May washed their faces, arms, and legs. They collected some of the Watmill berries and placed them in Ash's pack. Her own could only hold one, unfortunately. After their Pokemon ate their fill of the berries, Ash and May sent them back to their Pokeballs, except Pikachu, of course, and walked through the woods back to the campsite. The only things remaining to be collected were the clothesline, Ash's sleeping bag, and the shirt May wore yesterday. Having forgotten about them, May realized that they wouldn't fit with the Watmill berries they had collected, but by taking the largest out of Ash's pack, they managed to barely fit it all in. I guess we can snack on it while we wait, he mentioned her, handing it to the girl while we put his pack back on. No! May's arms curled the berry protectively. She had actually a chance to read her berry encyclopedia, it seemed. Watmill berries are really rare. It's a miracle we found an entire grove of them. This can be used to make some very good Pokeblock. Fine, but you're carrying it. Fine, May said flatly stated. They walked down the road, neither of them saying anything to each other. What does she think he is? He pondered himself. Pikachu had taken residence on May's head because she's, still wore his hat. He found the hat apparently more comfortable than Ash's hair and napped on her as they traveled in the forest. Ash returned to his returned to his inner monologue. Does she think because I like her that she can walk all over me like that? He fumed silently to himself. I mean, I was glad to help her yesterday, but did she think she can just say jump and I'll go how high? He looked over at May's content face, seeing her smile at the berry in her arms. His anger quickly dissolved, the happiness on her face filling with a gladness of sorts. She doesn't think like that, he told himself. She was just keeping it like she originally planned. Ash's thoughts wandered to the food fight earlier that morning. He had seen something in her that he hadn't noticed before. Inside the seemingly innocent young woman, a wild girl came to the surface. She smiled slyly and had a look of a girl who knew what she wanted and knew what she had to do to get it. As quickly as she came, the wild girl was gone, and the sweet, innocent, kind May who captured his heart in the first place returned. He'd never seen her act that way before, and he wondered briefly what could have been the trigger for her to act like that. When Misty and I traveled together, I remember her going from sweetly hanging around to being sour and hitting me. I guess I'll never understand, girls. They came to the edge of the woods, eventually. They stepped out, and a dusty road stretched to the left and right. To the right was a tall mountain, but to the left was a small, old signboard. He walked up to it and began to laugh in amusement. When I asked him what was up, he replied, I know where we are now. She turned to the sign and read it. East, Cerulean City. West, Mount Moon. Upon closer inspection, in the lower right corner of the sign, there was a worn, almost indecipherable phrase written. She drew her face closer and was able to read it. Gary was here. Ash is a loser. She gasped at what she read, and Ash saw her reaction. That is actually quite a few years old, he remarked. Gary really did antagonize you, didn't he? He nodded. I was reminded of him by the way Drew treated you the first time. And he looked at the sign again and came to a realization. If I were a boy, would my rivalry with Drew be the same as Ash's was with Gary? Does he only treat me nicely because I'm a girl? She felt herself become disgusted with Drew for a moment, reached into her pack and pulled out a marker. Scribbled over Gary and Ash's names, then bolded the rest of the words in the original sentence. The reformatted phrase stated, May was here, Drew is a loser! What was that for? Ash asked her as they walked toward the city. People like him have it coming, she replied, still sour over what she thought of him. Ash sighed as they stepped into town, and he guided them through it to the Pokémon Center. Oh, those little goobers, am I right? Am I right? Ha ha ha! I'm telling you, man. Cuteness! Alright, now I'm gonna find the right song. Okay. Chapter 9. Center. This is Cerulean City, right? She asked Ash as they arrived in the Pokemon Center. Yeah, what about it? Isn't this where your friend Misty lives? Yeah, what about that? Ash walked to... Just then they walked to the counter. Hey, Nurse Joy! He said as he rang the bell on the desk. Hello, and welcome to our Pokemon Center. The ever-familiar Pokemon nurse stepped out and introduced herself. A large pink round Pokemon stepped out behind her. She had a plain-looking smile on her face, and on top of her round egg-shaped body was a small nurse. She also wore a small apron. Chansey! The Pokemon greeted the training visitors. Joy, do you have any male relatives that run a Pokemon Center in the wilderness? He asked her. Did you run into Joseph? She got an annoyed look across her normally calm face. Yeah, May responded. Why is that? Joy sighed. He's one of the very few boys born to our family this generation. He's a good doctor for the Pokemon, but he keeps that Skarmory around. That did seem a little off, May remarked. That Skarmory was his first Pokemon, and together they promised they would be the greatest Pokemon Center running team in the world. Problem is that Skarmory isn't the gentlest of Pokemon, even though she means well. Ash, on the other hand, just wanted to get to the chase. Well, we have some friends there, and we'd like to have the number for that center so we can call them. Oh, she spat. Most of the people she was talking to seemed to want to move on and leave her alone to be lonely again. Here's the number. She handed Ash a piece of paper with the phone number hastily scribbled onto it. They then left their Pokemon with the nurse, including Pikachu, and went to call their friends. Ash, May, you're both okay, were the first words out of Brock's mouth, having answered the phone. Hearing the shout, Max, Drew, and Dr. Joseph ran over the monitor to see if he was telling the truth. May! Max leapt into Brock's face to see his sister. She smiled back at him and nodded through the monitor. Maybe we should all use different phones, Brock suggested, moving Max back into the background. May and Max agreed, went to separate phones on the respective sides of the phone and called each other. Brock and Ash continued their conversation uninhibited. The younger told the elder that they had fallen into the lake, but he had saved himself in May, and also noted May's quick response to his wounds for saving his life. That sounds bad, Ash, Brock commented. Are you and Swallow all right? Yeah. Like I told you, May ripped her bandana off and used it to bind my wounds. I calmed Swallow down. He's all right. Ash continued his story, talking about how he and May camped out, found food the next morning, and found the trail to Cerulean City. Needless to say, though, he left out the details like May borrowing a shirt and the food fight they had. But we did mention the Watmel berries in the story of the sign. I remember that sign, Brock said with a laugh. That was a long time ago. I'm surprised it didn't get replaced before now. I'm kind of glad it wasn't, Ash responded. Kind of like an artifact from my early days. I still thought it was pretty funny when May wrote over it, though. Yeah, Brock agreed. And see if you can't get May to spare some of those Watmel berries. I think I can make a great batch of Pokemon food with at least one of those. Alright, I will. Oh, did you have any plans of seeing Missy while you were in town? I did. I have some stuff I gotta talk to her about. The former gym leader nodded, wished Ash good luck, and told him that he, Max, and possibly Drew would be joining him soon. Ash nodded, thanked his friend, and hung up the phone. Meanwhile, May and Max had held their conversation. May told her brother about the night they first arrived at Dr. Joseph's center. She mentioned Pikachu, Drew, who was standing in the background behind Max but well within earshot, and Ash. She told him about her talk with Brock and the subsequent failed plan that they had developed. Man, I can't believe Ash would ever say something like that to a girl. I mean, Ash is really cool and tough. He's like my second hero. And he says he likes you. And you're just my dumb old girly sister. May got an annoyed look on her face, but continued to tell the story just the same. Like Ash, she left out the part about Ash's shirt, but she mentioned the food fight, though not as much detail. The thought of Ash and his sister throwing things at each other brought a smile to Max's face, like May thought it would. He asked her if she saw any Pokemon in the forest, to which May replied no, but she didn't find that out of the ordinary. She continued the story, skipping over the part about the sign, fearing Drew's reaction to hearing what she had done. Before long, she finished telling her story, and Max began to explain what had been going on at the center. Brock was worried about them, predictably, but he didn't phone their dad or Ash's mom, feeling himself responsible. Drew was almost constantly right on Flygon, trying to see if he could find them. He didn't find any trace of them from the lake shore, so he continued to fly, but big trees prevented him from seeing anyone. He was out for like 8 hours at a time looking for you guys, Max exclaimed, seemingly having gained a good deal of respect for Drew over the course of 2 days without his sister. Having heard that remark in his favor, Drew drifted out of the background. Max continued telling his story. Dr. just continued running the center as if nothing was wrong, occupied in his belief that his was the greatest Pokemon center in the world. He was concerned, however, as Max noted seeing Skarmory following Drew. Okay, time to change the music again! Found it. But May, have you picked one yet? Max asked out of the blue. What? She was shocked. What do you mean? Max took a quick look around on his end to make sure no one was listening.
I mean, have you picked Ash or Drew yet?
What's the matter to you? Well, part of me is thinking how cool it would be to hang out with just Ash and Brock without having you around. You know, just the guys. May nodded, indicating for him to continue. But another part of me is really gonna miss you if you leave, even if that means you... Even if that does mean you make kissy faces at Ash. May knew that Max was going to be a large factor in her decision. Even when she fought with her brother, she really cared about him. Well, to be honest, she told her sibling, I haven't really decided yet. I'll come up with some kind of choice by the time you guys get here, alright? She was hoping this answer would satisfy him without forcing her to choose. He nodded and flipped out the Pokénav, indicating that Cerulean was 3 days' travel from their current location, giving May just 3 days to choose one of them. We'll be leaving for Cerulean in the morning, so you can relax tonight, alright, sis? She nodded to the information, and Max began saying his goodbyes when May interrupted. Hey, Max, wait, she began. I want to talk to you for a little bit longer. About what? Well, I feel like I haven't done a good job of being an older sister these past 2 days, she told him with sadness in her eyes. I'm sorry I left you behind. I was worried about you, Max. I was worried about you too, sis, he responded. But don't be so hard on yourself. You don't know what could have happened with Team Rocket, although I would have liked to be in on your plan. Sorry about that too. Is that all? No, there's one more thing. Regardless of whom I choose, I want you to know that you'll always be my little brother, and I'll always love you. Thanks, May. I love you too. See you in 3 days. They said their goodbyes and hung up the phone. Ash and May collected their recovered Pokemon from Joy, but before the nurse could snare them in another conversation, they quickly asked for their room. They mentioned that they would need the standard double bunk bedroom because they had 2 friends coming in a few days. While in their room, Ash set down his backpack full of the Wildmill berries they had collected, while May left both hers in the room. After May took a moment to adjust the hat she was wearing in the mirror, she and Ash wandered to the cafeteria. They ordered their food and sat down in one of the booths. So, what'd you talk with Brock about? May asked him, before taking some of her ramen and her chopsticks. I talked to him about what happened to us, he stated. He and Max were worried about us. He then took a bite from his hamburger, looked at it for a moment, and then began to wrestle the ketchup bottle out of Pikachu's hands. So is Drew, apparently, May hinted before slurping down more of her ramen. Ash raised an eyebrow while he squirted some ketchup on his burger before handing the bottle back to an annoyed Pikachu. She explained what Max had explained to her. Anyway, Ash continued, I told him about what happened yesterday and today. I feel kind of bad because I didn't tell him the whole story. You left out the shirt thing, didn't you? May smiled at him from across the table. Yeah, how'd you know? I didn't tell Max either. She said with a giggle. Great minds think alike, I guess. I guess you didn't mention the food fight either, huh? Actually, I did, but I left out the wrestling part. I don't think Max would be very happy if he knew I brought you to the ground. Horizon looked deeper into Ash's. It was that look he remembered. It was that same look he remembered from earlier that day. Ash gulped audibly. But then, he continued, he wanted me to ask you if you would save him some of the Wildmill berries we collected. He said you wanted to make some new Pokemon food with it. May's eyes returned to normal. I don't see anything wrong with it. She slurped down more of a ramen. Oh, he also asked me if I was going to visit Misty, so I plan on going over to the gym tomorrow. Would you like to come? Sure, May said enthusiastically. I'd love to see Misty again. Ash then switched the questioning over to his companion. So what did you talk to Max about? Well, after telling me how worried everyone was, he asked me if I had made up my mind yet, she said, blushing. About what? Ash asked, knowing perfectly well what she was referring to, of course, but had decided to play dumb. If I had chosen between the two of you yet. May trailed off, looking into the bowl. But there are only a few noodles left. Two of... You mean Drew and me, right? She nodded. What did you tell him? I told him I hadn't decided yet. I also said that I have the answer by the time they arrive, 3 days from now. So I'm gonna have to think about it during that time. Ash nodded, finishing his burger. Well, I've been thinking too, he said. He looked her in the eyes and said, I want you to be happy, May. I want you to do what you want. If you want to go with Drew, then I don't want you to have any regrets. If you leave, I promise I'll take care of Max for you. Ash, she whispered, why would you do that? Because I want to do what is for the best, I told her. Not just for you, but for everybody. Max will miss his big sister, so I can act as his big brother for him if I need to. Ash said, her eyes tearing up. You're already a big brother to Max. He feels comfortable around you, and sometimes I feel like Max can relate to you better because you're a boy. Okay, well this part is actually something that I probably should have done some rewriting. No, Ash, she said, tears slowly sliding on her face. Don't talk to me talk like you're giving up. That's not the Ash I know. Like I said, it's my decision. I'll try to take everything I can into account. But then her anger came to a fever pitch, and she stood up and began belting out. Don't say things to try to get me to go with Drew. I'll be the one to choose. You can't force me one way or the other. She then ran out of the cafeteria, tears running down her face. Everyone else who was eating at the cafeteria at the time had turned to look at him, saw that he turned a deep red. One person didn't pay too much attention to Ash's spectacle. Oh wait, no, I missed a part. Before things can get any, before the looks can get any more, you know, more heated, Ash quickly grabbed Pikachu and ran out of the room, hoping to avoid any further misfortune. One person didn't pay attention to Ash's spectacle, however. His purple eyes were squarely focused on the door May left through. He gripped his chopsticks and broke them, dropping an octopus dumpling back onto his plate. May, he grumbled. I'll get my revenge. Chapter 10. Blows. By the time Ash had returned to his room, May had begun taking a shower. Ash decided not to press the issue any further, so he gathered a towel himself, set of clean clothes, some soap, and Pikachu, and they went to the communal bath in the center. He undressed and placed his clothes in one of the tiny lockers in the room. And he and Pikachu stepped into the bath, lowered himself into the warm water, and sighed, Pikachu following suit. Hey Pikachu, what do you think was up with May? He opened the conversation with his partner. Clearly, he had little more than idea than he did, which only left him more wanting for answers. What do you think she meant by, don't say things to get me to go with Drew, he asked Pikachu. The mouse Pokemon blew some bubbles in the water. He looked to the side as if to say, well, that is kind of what you're doing, Ash. You really think that? Ash asked him. Pikachu shrugged. Well, it's something to think about. Back in the room, May was crouched in the shower, crying. The water had run over her face and mixed with the tears. It's like he wants me to go with Drew. I thought he said he loved me! Many thoughts ran through her head at the same time. It felt as though a large part of her conscience yelled out to her, Drew would never try to get rid of me like that. Another part chimed in, Ash is an idiot! He doesn't understand love! But from a small place, way in the back of her mind, a voice shot up. Ash showed me so much compassion over the last 2 days. He worried about me catching cold. He didn't complain when I slept with him last night. He didn't get offended when we wrestled in the Wattmillberry Grove. She listened to this upstart voice, nodded in agreement with it. The food fight in the Grove caved in her mind again. She knew that she shouldn't have straddled him like she did, but at the same time, she wanted to do it, and on impulse did what she wanted to do. She stopped crying and sat up, and thought about Ash. She wondered why he'd given her the go-ahead to pursue Drew if he loved her. Or if he loved her. And she remembered making the scene in the cafeteria. She felt bad about how she had acted. I've got to tell him I'm sorry, and then I can ask him what he meant, she thought to herself while getting out. She put on the clothes she had been wearing, not having a set of clothes that didn't smell like pond water. The only exception, of course, was her hat. Ash's hat, she corrected herself. She left it outside, having tossed the symbol of the boy across the room in frustration. She went out of the bathroom and picked it up, hugging it for a moment, placing it on his pack in the room. She turned back to one of the beds and sat on the bottom bunk and waited for him to return. Ash had finished bathing a while ago. Why did that guy look familiar? He kept thinking to himself. When he was getting out of the bath, he saw a man with long purple hair getting in. Ash felt that he probably should have recognized him. I hope he didn't hear any of my conversation with Pikachu, he worried. Though he dismissed the thought seconds later. If I didn't recognize him, then he probably didn't recognize me. Probably just thought I was a weirdo hanging out with a Pokemon in the bath. His train of thought was interrupted by the ding of the dryer that Pikachu was leaning on, trying to derive some heat from it. He took one of the laundry baskets available and tossed all the clothes into the basket. He peered inside the dryer to make sure he'd gotten all the clothes. Staring back at him, defying his authority, was a pair of Mace panties sitting in the back of the drying chamber. I am not touching those, he thought to himself. He turned to Pikachu. Pikachu, get in there and pick those up. The Pokemon nodded and began to climb into the dryer. He touched his hand to the hot metal, pried out, and left back. When Ash tried to tell him to try again, Pikachu shook his head no and showed him his burnt hand. He wasn't wounded, but it was hot, as Ash felt when he put his head back in the dryer. He slowly reached out and touched May's undergarment in his hand, reluctantly. They felt cottony and smooth. He grabbed them, pulled them out, and closed the dryer. But he felt himself unable to put them down for some reason. He had never held a pair of women's underwear before. They felt odd in his hands. They were stretchy and soft. I wonder what they smell like, he thought. He slowly brought them to his nose and took a quick sniff, tossing them into the laundry basket afterwards. Unsurprisingly, they smelled like the laundry detergent he used on all the clothes. He blushed in embarrassment, hoping no one had seen him do something so weird. Pikachu leapt onto Ash's shoulder and felt his forehead. I'm fine, Pikachu. It was a weird thought that went through my head, and I just wanted to see what they smelled like. They smelled like detergent anyway. Pikachu shrugged, and Ash picked up the clothes basket and carried it back to the room. When he had entered, he saw May sitting on the bottom bunk of one of the beds. He placed the basket in front of her. You aren't serious, are you? She looked at him, wondering where he got the audacity to make her fold both of her clothes by himself. I'll help you, don't worry, he said with a smile. He sat on the bed next to the basket and began taking out his clothes and folding them while May took out hers and did likewise. Pikachu sat on the top bug on the opposite bed and curled up. Continuing to fold clothes, May turned to Ash. I want her to apologize for something again, she said. A blow up in the cafeteria? Yeah, she meekly responded. What was that about? He asked her, placing one of the shirts on the bed to start a stack. I said something and you got all upset. I don't know what I did wrong. I overreacted, and I didn't mean to cause such a big scene, she admitted. I'm sorry, but why did you tell me that? Tell you what? You told me that you'd take care of Max if I chose Drew. She looked up at him, his face filled with concern with a dash of confusion. I felt like by you saying that you wanted me to go with him, she said as she looked down at a pair of shorts in her hands. Ash reached his hand over the basket and held hers. I didn't mean it like that, calmly told her. What I meant was... He took a moment to gather his thoughts, his hand still holding May's. What I meant to say was that I wanted to watch out for you. You love Max probably more than you either me or Drew, and I know his happiness was something you cared about. He knew he wasn't doing a very good job at trying to make her feel better, but he had to try anyway. I want to protect you, and things that are important to you, he told her. And I know that Max is really important to you. I'm just not good at expressing my thoughts to other people, I guess. He smiled and looked at her eyes. He saw tears welling up inside, and his heart sank. I guess I'm not as good at cheering people up as I thought, he sighed, releasing her hand. May broke down in tears further and leapt into his arms, filling the clothes basket on the ground and crying fitfully. She wrapped her arms around his body and held him tightly. Ash, trying to understand what was going on, wrapped his arms around her, holding her tightly. He felt a sudden strength in himself. He laid his face down in her hair, smelling the shampoo she had used recently. She felt safe with him holding her. Her crying began to slow, but his strong arms remained, tightly holding her, supporting her. She felt that she had no need to cry anymore. Eventually, she calmed down, and her breathing began to slow. She felt Ash run his fingers through her hair. She smiled into his chest where in the sea. She wiped her tears on his sweatshirt and looked up at him. Her eyes were bloodshot from all the crying she had done. May, Ash whispered to her, why are you crying? I don't know, Ash. I miss Max. You got hurt recently. We've been fighting today over that stupid berry, and I guess all the stress caught up at me. I just needed a place to cry. She nuzzled her head against his chest. Thanks for being in that place. Anytime, May responded, running his fingers through her hair again. Anytime. May sat up from him and laughed. I guess we need to pick up all those clothes and fold them, huh? They both looked over to see Pikachu folding May's last blouse. He quickly turned and sat in the stack where the rest of her clothes were in. Pikachu, May said, startled. Did you fold all those? He nodded. Did you see what just happened up here? Ash asked. He nodded again. Ash smiled. Come on, buddy. Pikachu enthusiastically leapt up at Ash and placed himself between them, not forcing them apart, but becoming a part of their embrace. Ash broke it off and headed for the door. When May asked him where he was going, he turned to her and saying, I'm just hitting the light. He flicked off the switch, the moon now only the light source of the room. He walked back over to May and Pikachu and shook them both into his arms. I guess we can all sleep together again tonight, he whispered to them. May wrapped her arms around the boy and his Pokemon, and in that embrace, the three of them, Ash, May, and Pikachu, drifted off to sleep. Chapter 11, Cerulean. I know, right, Aiden? I hate my life more! Ugh. May opened her eyes to see Ash and Pikachu still sleeping. The sunlight dimly lit the room. She sat up on the covers, something none of them got under. She looked down at the neatly folded stack of her clothes and slowly crawled off the bed and collected full set. She tiptoed down to the bathroom and locked the door behind her. Ash, May called to him. Ash turned to see her dressed fully in his clothes. The baggy sweatshirt hid her figure well, and the pants were too baggy for her to be walking in. May, are you wearing my clothes? He asked her. She turned his hat around her head. She began to walk towards him, stepping out of his pants. She was wearing the pair of cotton panties Ash had to fish out of the dryer the night before. As she walked, she swayed her hips seductively. So, Ash, she asked him, honey in her voice, you want to see what they feel like? Ash bolted awake, his heart pounding like a drum in his chest. His motion launched Pikachu off the bed and onto the ground. He rolled... And on impact, he rolled across the ground. Pikachu was confused, being tossed around the room while enjoying the slumber. Ash looked around in a panic. The light in the bedroom was on and glowing in front of the door. Ash slid off the bed and walked cautiously toward it, timidly knocking on it. May, he called to the other side. Hear the sound of the shower through the door. Where are the L's? Where are the L's? Where are the L's? Oh, here it is. What is it, Ash? A cheery voice came from behind the door. Nothing. He let out a sigh of relief. I was just wondering where you were. Did you miss me already? She laughed in the shower. Of course! Ash talked his audience sarcastically. It was good. My life revolves around you, Pokemon battles, and Pikachu. They both ended up having a good laugh about that. But by that time, Pikachu had come to his senses and was angry with Ash launching him. He stepped from around the bed and glowered at him. Hey, Pikachu, good morning. Ash greeted his Pokemon, none the wiser. Sparks showered from his cheeks. And then he shouted as he launched a thunderbolt at him. The trainer screamed as the shot coursed through his body, and although it lasted only briefly, it did scorch the clothes he was wearing. Ash! May shouted from the bathroom. Are you alright? Yeah, I'm gonna need the shower after you're done. Oh, speaking of that, though, you have something to ask you about, my gal. DM in a bit. Alright, sounds good, Aiden. Of course. Absolutely. May opened the door and let him in. He carried in a change of clothes, but she noticed how he seemed to smell like someone had burned him. Though she did immediately know who did after putting two and two together. She walked out into the room and sat in front of the mirror. She turned to Pikachu and asked him why he attacked his friend. The electric type mimed the scene where Ash awoke, complete with the jerking motion he made complete with the jerking motion. He pointed to where he had landed on the hard ground. She stroked his fur for a moment and then sat him down. She told him that she should apologize, and the Pokemon went and waited for him to be done showering. May turned her attention back to the mirror and took out a brush out of her pack and began to brush the tangles out of her hair. She smiled at the good-spirited girl smiling back at her from the mirror. As she got her hair just perfect, she reached to Ash's nearby pack and carefully placed his hat on her head. She winked at the mirror. I can't believe how cute I am, she giggled to herself. For some reason, today felt like it was going to be a good day. She couldn't quite put her finger on what made her feel so giddy. She didn't really care what the reason was. She was just determined to have a good day with Ash today. As she made another cute pose in the mirror, Ash walked in from the bathroom. Hey, Ash, you feeling better? Pikachu leapt into his shoulder and stepped out to face him. Ash, I'm sorry. He said, he said in, in Pokemon, I'm just translating, this is kind of an ad-lib. It's all right, Pikachu, Ash said with a smile. I'd be grouchy if I was woken up like that, too. He then turned to May. Yeah, I'm all right. I don't know what it is, but today just seems like my day. She stood up and held the tip of his hat. Come on, Pikachu, May said, trying her best to imitate Mash's voice. Let's go to Cerulean Gym and win a gym badge! Pika! Pokemon cheered and leapt from Ash's to May's shoulder. All right, let's visit Misty, he agreed. They took their packs with them and walked quietly out of the center. Luckily for them, Joyce passed out in front of her computer and Chansey waved them goodbye quietly. They smiled back at the normal type and left the center. On their way, Ash and May passed a strip. May saw the ice cream parlor and licked her lips. Come on, Ash, let's get some ice cream, she said, tugging on his arm. Not right now, he said, pulling away. We're going to the gym. Besides, we haven't had breakfast yet. Fine. She was just about to let the subject drop, but then she had an idea. But promise we'll go get ice cream later. All right, we will, he promised. He looked over behind her, trying to see something. But if he's with May, wouldn't he have already? Yeah, he did. She was just imitating him. That was May talking. She was trying to imitate his voice. And I think I did a bad job imitating her, imitating Ash's voice. If that makes sense. No, you're all good, you're all good, you're all good. What's up, Ash? She turned and looked at a small park in the middle of the city. A group of trees separated them from the inner field, though she didn't really see anything in the trees. Nothing, but just thought I saw something, he said, blinking. Come on, let's go. As they walked on, a man with long purple hair and a green outfit resembling a Pokemon sighed. His sharp purple eyes glanced over to make sure that the couple had continued walking before he followed them further. They arrived at the building that, to May, resembled a circus tent. There was a sign on the top of the building featuring Dugong with the words Cerulean Gym sprawled across its underside. They walked up to the door, which opened automatically. A pretty young girl in a tank top and short shorts sat at the reception desk, strumming out with her fingers. Her other hand was absentmindedly curling her long blonde hair, though her eyes shot up and her expression lit up upon eyeing Ash. Hey, she said with a voice suiting a Valier. Welcome to the gym! I can't do a Valier voice. And who's your pretty little friend? I'm May, I'm from Petalburg City. Like, my name's Daisy, and I'm Misty's oldest older sister. She pulled a bright smile on her face and pointed to herself. I'm still super cute, though, aren't I? Yeah, May managed to get out, Daisy's friendliness making her feel uncomfortable. Y'all came to see, like, Misty, didn't you? She asked them, her smile never leaving her face. That's right. Is she here? She's at the pool. Come on, I'll take you both to her. And then, oh, wait, have to change music. One of my favorite Kingdom Hearts 2 songs. Yeah. Oh wait, this isn't the. Oh, this is the vanilla version. Oh well, this is still fine. It's still an awesome song. It wasn't a long walk, seeing as how they went through one doorway before the pool. Lots of water-type Pokemon swam around. Some star-shaped, with their glowing cores, floated lazily in the pool, while others, such as the frog and coral Pokemon, held a swimming race to see which was the fastest. On the side of the pool crouched a girl, watching as a yellow duck Pokemon gratefully ate from his food bowl. She wore a yellow top with matching yellow shorts, and had her orange hair in a ponytail to the side of her head. Julian Jen, that means Misty. World War III is about to happen. Ah! Yeah, prepare yourselves! World War III is gonna happen! Well, actually, I don't know. You might be surprised how things turn out a little bit. Maybe. Wait a minute, is that a... Sorry, I just noticed there was a... I just noticed that there is a... video... There's a thumbnail of a video on YouTube that shows Sora holding up the Kingdom Key, like, as if he were an Ocarina of Time. And I got, like, so confused, like, wait a minute, is that for Ocarina of Time? But then I thought, oh wait, no, that's just a visual gag. And now I'm like, well, not disappointed, but, you know. Anyway. Pikachu Pete! Pikachu exclaimed, leaping from May and running to the girl. Her cerulean blue eyes looked in surprise as she started to see Pikachu leap into her arms. Pikachu? What are you doing here? The calm gym leader then looked up to see Ash, May, and Daisy walking over. Oh, hello, Ash! Hi, May! She smiled, running to them with Pikachu in her arms. It's been a long time! How have you guys been? We're great, Misty, Ash told her. Misty nodded and looked around. You two are still traveling around with Brock and Max, right? She said, shooting a concerned look at Ash. Are they okay? It's a long story, Ash began. He did start the story only to be soon interrupted by his stomach growling. He put his hand behind his head in an embarrassed sort of way in response. Maybe we could talk about it over breakfast? He asked. May and Misty smiled at the same time and both said, same old typical Ash. And when they realized this, they both giggled and resisted the urge to yell out Jinx to the other. Well, I just got done feeding everyone here, so let's go get something to eat. Misty guided them to the back where a living area was. Daisy fixed some food for all of them while the two traveling trainers told their story. They told Misty about how Team Rocket kidnapped May, and he and May's rival Drew had to rescue her. May found herself being interrupted by Ash often, with him trying to move the story along and skipping any parts dealing with himself and May being close. About the events in the Pokemon Center the night before, Ash only mentioned that they called their friends to let them know they were alright. May getting upset, crying, being reassured by Ash, all of it didn't even get a mention. By the time Ash had said that they were expecting friends in 3 days, May had gotten slightly annoyed. She made a mental note to bring it up with Ash later, possibly over ice cream. Hey May, Ash said to her after he'd finished the meal Daisy provided her. I need to talk to Misty in private. Could you go find something for you to do in the gym while I talk to her? May swallowed her last bite of food and looked at him, slightly confused. Guess so. Why all the secrecy? I just wanted to catch up on what she's been up to, I told her. May wasn't falling for it, but before she could voice her concerns again, Daisy spoke up. Oh, I just so remembered, she squealed. May, we just got some new berry blenders installed. Would you like to make some Pokéblock? May smiled, thinking about the berries that she and Ash had collected. They won't stay fresh forever, her voice nagged her. To which she agreed. I guess you two can have your private conversation. I'm gonna blend some berries. Ash handed her the berries as she stood and carefully cradled them in her arms and followed Daisy down the hall. May was led down the hall and then down a flight of stairs. She saw so many water Pokemon sleeping at the bottom of the pool, which could be seen from the basement. Are all of those Pokemon Misty? She asked. Daisy, she led her. Mostly, but a few belong to me, and our Dugong belongs to the gym as a whole, she explained, pointing out the sleeping water and ice type among the Goldeen Sea King. A large blue serpent came up to the glass and growled at May. The young trader was scared and dropped the berries to the ground. That's Misty's Gyarados, her strongest Pokemon, she said matter-of-factly. May gulped, hoping that she'd never have to fight such a terrifying Pokemon, and she gathered the berries back up. Daisy led her to the end of the hall, in a room that contained several berry blenders. A few boxes of berries also sat in the room. Daisy told her that she could help herself to any berries she thought she needed. May opened her berry encyclopedia, flipping through it and looked in the box to see which berries they had lying around. Knowing that the sweetness of the Wotmel berries would be best accented with some bitterness and a bit of dryness, she picked out some Magos berries and corn berries. She also added one Wotmel berry and turned the machine on. The machine began to purr quietly. After a few moments, some small pink Pokéblock fell out. Now, who to test it on? May thought out loud. Munchlax would eat anything that was in front of it, so he was out. May decided that she would test them on Eevee, reaching out for the normal type's Pokeball and releasing it. The canine looked at her mistress expectantly, and May dropped one of the Wotmel Pokeblocks into her Pokemon's mouth. Eevee chewed the candy with little difficulty, and she seemed to enjoy it. Proud that she had come up with a satisfactory product, she began to make more of these Pokeblock. Each time the machine began to purr, she could only think of what Ash and Misty could possibly be thinking about. He had asked her explicitly to leave them, and he wouldn't give her an answer as to why. Is Ash still interested in Misty, she thought? It was more things to bring up with him over the promised ice cream. She licked her lips at the thought of it. She was planning on getting a brownie sundae. She'd always liked the chocolate brownies her mom baked for her, and she always loved ice cream and hot fudge. Before she could further fantasize about ice cream, she realized that she had blended all of her Wotmel berries. She sighed and placed the new Pokeblock in her Pokeblock in her case and began to head out the door. She bumped into someone entering, falling on her end. She looked up to see a man glowering down at her. Sorry, I'm focusing on multiple things at once. Trying to read while also trying to select music. That doesn't work very well. His long purple hair flowed out from under his green hat. His sharp purple eyes glared at her from above his nose, his face in a frown. He wore a purple shirt with his belly button exposed. His green jacket and pants resembled Cacturn, his favorite Pokemon, clearly. So, I see you're done in here, he laughed. Harley! I shouted, coming to her feet. What are you doing here? I've just come to use the new berry blender since I'm in town. Did you just get done blending berries? Yup, she stood proudly. And my Pokemon like their taste. Well, that's not surprising, Harley said, placing his index finger to his chin. He extended it, pointing sharply at May, saying, because your Pokemon are used to eating bland, tasteless Pokeblock. He began to laugh at her, further infuriating her. Shut up, Harley! I've eaten you every time but once when we battled. My Pokeblock is much better than yours. That doesn't prove yours is better, Harley pointed out. It just proves that you're luckier than I am. Well, the reason your luck is rotten is because your attitude overflows into it, maybe. She knew she hated when she talked like that. Oh, you make me so mad, he growled, biting his handkerchief. May pulled herself out the door. Well, make your Pokeblock, Harley. I'm gonna go catch up with my friends. Misty was playing with the... When she walked inside, Misty was playing with her Azurill around the water, but Ash was nowhere to be seen, she noticed. Hey, Misty. Oh, hi, May. The orange-haired water trainer turned to her. She noticed the slight distress in her eyes. Is something the matter? Nothing important. She said, shrugging it off. Just some jerk. Okay. And then by then, her attention already returned to Azurill. Oh, Ash told me to tell you that he had to run some errands. He also said he'll meet you at that ice cream parlor the two of you saw on your way here. May then remembered the state of her personal items. Yeah, I could probably use some shopping too. She walked towards the exit, thanking Misty for her hospitality toward her, and left. From behind Misty, a pair of glowing purple eyes stared ominously. Yeah, I know this guy! Yeah. Yeah, I know this guy! From nowhere in particular! This guy! All right, Chapter 12, Corruption. Probably not a very good sounding title name for something that's just happening. Oh, are you the gym leader here? Harley said, coming out of the shadows, and asked Misty. Why, yes I am, she said with a smile. How can I help you? Well, I was just walking by, but did I hear you sending that girl off to find the boy you were talking to earlier? Harley asked her innocently. Yeah, Misty said unconcerned. He asked me to tell her when she got back. Why? I thought I heard a rumor that you had a crush on a boy who was a wandering trainer with a Pikachu, he said, smiling devilishly. Misty then blushed. She pushed her hands to her face, turning from him. Well, she started, smiling feverishly. Perfect, he thought. I'll just make Misty jealous and turn her against me. I'll ruin her by making her friends her enemies. Harley's perfect revenge! I used to, Misty finished. Just then, Harley's mouth dropped like a sack of bricks. What? But my perfect revenge! I'll tell you the story, but you gotta promise to keep it on your head, okay? Misty winked at him. Harley nodded, hoping that that during the story he could come up with a new way to attack his adversary. It all started a long time ago, Misty reminisced. I got in a fight with my sisters and told them I would come back and become the gym leader. I was so young then, and I didn't know what I was getting into. She told them about how she rode her bike as far from Cerulean as she could go. She sat down a river near Viridian and Pallet and began to fish. You know what that means? Fish! I was going to become a water Pokemon master, then I'd got to catch more Pokemon, I thought to myself. But I never thought that I would catch what I did that day. Misty told him how she fetched up a young boy, cradling an injured Pikachu in his arms. He asked her where he could go to help his Pokemon, and she pointed him in the direction of the Pokemon Center of Viridian City. He then stole her bike and rode off into the distance. I'd later find that it was almost entirely destroyed by Pikachu's Thunderbolt, Misty recounted humorously. She would then journey to the Pokemon Center in Viridian City to confront the boy who took her bike. When she arrived, she found the boy distraught, waiting for any word that his new friend would be okay. While she did tell him off, she would later ally herself with the boy against a Team Rocket attack on the center. She told herself that she would journey with the boy until he repaid her for her bike. Of course, that's what I told myself. She then said to Harley, pouring him a cup of tea. She took a sip from her own cup and continued. The more I followed him, though, the more I became his friend, and the less I actually wanted to get my bike back. I learned a lot about Pokemon with him, and actually caught most of my Pokemon while I was with him. I don't know when it happened, but at some point I guess I just started to feel different about him. I liked him in a different way. The way he would command in battle, the way he loved his Pokemon. I started to notice these things more and notice the annoying things he did less. I thought I would be able to mindlessly follow my crush forever. But then it happened. I got a call from my sisters shortly after Ash had finished competing in the Johto League. They told me to come back to the gym and watch it while they went on a trip. I initially refused, citing Ash's debt to me of one bike as my reason. The nurse Troy the Viridian Center, however, had repaired my bike while I went on a journey with Ash and his friends. I gave him my handkerchief to remember me by, hoping he would understand the significance of my gift and how I felt about him. When he left for Hoenn, I didn't hear from him as often, and while I was the gym leader, I know I'd become a better trainer. I've gotten a lot closer to my dream here than I would have if I kept hanging on Ash's coattails. I guess I started to take lessons Ash had taught everyone he met during his journey to Heart during this time. I thought if I loved him, I wouldn't mind letting him go for a while. And if I didn't, then my crush would fade eventually. I talked with his mother. Two of us became close friends. She told me what she had heard from Ash while he was in Hoenn. She told me that he had met a girl named May at named May there. At first, I was jealous. I thought Ash hanging around with some other girl made me mad, but as time went on, I didn't think it was as big a deal. I met May one day when I visited Hoenn for the Togepi Festival. She seemed like a nice girl. She and Ash had nothing between each other besides friendship. He didn't make any advances toward me, nor did he ask me to stay. I thought myself, he probably still doesn't understand that handkerchief I gave him. It was after that my crush began to fade. Ash wasn't ready for love, I thought. I wanted to get a boyfriend of myself, but I knew that if I kept hanging on Ash, I wouldn't be happy. It was at that point I formally dissolved my crush on him, and decided to expand my options. So, you're not in love with him? Harley said cheerfully, but deep down he was feeling absolutely defeated. I didn't need the history lesson either, he mentally spat at her. No, Misty shook her head. Both he and I matured while we were apart. His mother phoned me one day saying that he was returning home after the Hoenn League. I, of course, watched it on TV, but I was glad to know he was coming back. She invited me to meet him when he got home, and I agreed and rode my bike. Part of me was eager to reignite those feelings I had so long ago. I took my new Azurill with me, and I wanted him to see me in the best possible light. The moment of truth came, and I heard him come through the door. I walked in to see the look on his face. Instead of having these feelings of love come back to me, all I had was my friendship with him. After a surprise visit from Professor Birch and Max, May's little brother, we all had dinner. I decided to wait in Pallet before I went on home. I went outside to look at the starry sky, and I was kind of down that I didn't have feelings for him anymore, but at the same time, I felt free. I knew now, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that I had gotten over my crush on him. As I was affirming this to myself, Ash came up behind me. Hey, Misty. Ash walked up and sat next to her. Can we talk? Sure, she responded. What's on your mind? He reached into his pocket and pulled out the handkerchief Misty had given him. I know what this means now, he told her, and I can't accept it. What do you mean? She felt her cheeks begin to flush. I know you gave me this because you love me. He looked at the grass. I'm sorry, but I can't return those feelings. Still averting her gaze, he pushed the handkerchief in her hands. Please, take it back, he pleaded. You know the funny part, Ash Ketchum? She asked him. Without waiting for a response, she continued, I've already gotten over my crush on you, but I won't take it back. Why? Because now it's a symbol of our friendship. I used to like you, Ash. That's why I gave it to you. But it was just a childish crush. I've grown up a lot since we parted. Now, I want it to be a reminder to you, all the fun times we had together. She smiled, closing his hand around the handkerchief and pushed his hand back to him. You'll always be my first crush, Ash, and we'll always be friends, okay? Ash smiled and nodded. Thanks, Misty. You are one of my very best friends. Now, Misty got all sly. Why did you want to give it back? Ash blushed and looked towards the sky. There's this girl I like, he began. Misty smiled. It's that May girl, isn't it? Ash looked at her in wonder. How did you know? You're so predictable, Ashy! She rubbed his hat against his head. She's probably the only girl you've been around since I've been gone. He blushed some more. Can you give me some advice, Misty? I mean, you're great at that love stuff, and I'm not even really sure about any of it. Okay, what's the situation? Well, she went home to the Petalburg gym, so I don't know when I'll be able to see her again. There's also this new challenge here in Kanto called the Battle Frontier, which means I'll be traveling again. I'm gonna miss her, Misty. How can I make sure we stay friends? Misty sat up and looked at the stars. You have to call her often, and send her romantic letters. I can help with that part. But above all else is that you can't let her get away. I regret not telling you how I felt back then, but now that you know, it doesn't seem like it would have kept my crush on you alive that much longer. You can't let the girl you love get away, Ash. Of course, neither of us knew May would follow Ash to Pallet Town and follow him during his Battle Frontier quest, but after I came back to the gym, I sent him a letter wishing him good luck with May. So you definitely have no feelings for him? Harley asked, utterly crying on the inside. Nothing other than friendship, she told him, sipping more tea. But why are you interested in that so much? Harley gulped. Oh, does she think I like her? He thought. Then what did you two talk about when you sent May away? He asked her. If you tell me, I'll tell you my reason. Oh, all right. She then recounted her conversation. So, Ash, Misty began as soon as May was out of earshot. How go things on the love frontier? Ash told her things he kept out of the story while May was present. He also told her that he had admitted his feelings before he felt he was ready, only because he felt like he was going to lose her. He told Misty nearly everything. His dream about losing her, loaning May his clothes, sleeping with her, the wrestling, the sign, to which Misty laughed, and the entire situation at the Pokemon Center the night before. All of it but his injury. Why was May wearing your hat, Ash? He asked him. Her bandana got torn while we landed, so I loaned her my hat. Well, if you want to do something sweet for her, you should go buy her a new bandana, Ash. She shoved him playfully on his shoulder, which made him cringe. When Misty asked him what the matter was, he brushed her off and told her that he was going to buy her a new bandana like he suggested. Don't tell May, though. Tell her I just went on some errands, and tell her I'll meet up with her at the ice cream parlor we saw on the way here. With that, he took Pikachu and left, leaving Misty concerned over what happened to his shoulder that he didn't tell her. There! I told you what I wanted to talk to him about. Misty then pointed her finger at Harley. Now, why is it any of your business? Because I know what's really going on, he said sadly. I know what May's doing to that poor boy. What? Misty's eyes filled with concern. What do you mean? What has she been doing to Ash? She's got the bait, now to reel her in. Harley grinned inwardly. His face took a pathetic expression. Oh, it's horrible, Misty, he cried. She's so abusive of him. When she gets mad at anyone, even her brother, she takes it out on poor Ash instead. She's been beating him since they met up back in Kanto. Even her brother and her other friend don't know. His tears were freely flowing. Ash tries to act strong. He acts like nothing is wrong, but his shoulders are cut up where she's been lashing at him. I can only assume that without anyone else to stop her, she's been even worse to him. But wait, Misty stopped him. How do you know? Do you even know May? Of course I do, he shouted, still crying. I was her first boyfriend. Misty was shocked. And she did this to you too? Yes, he cried. She would beat me herself, or she'd let her Pokemon do it for her. May is so violent, but she does well to hide it. He then tried drying his eyes on his sleeve. Ash is just an innocent boy. I don't want to see anyone else become a battered boyfriend with this violent maniac. I was trying to get you to fight her on your own so I wouldn't have to relive this painful story, but I'll do what I have to if it means stopping her reign of terror. I'm so sorry, Misty began, realizing she'd never learned his name. I'm Harley from Slateport City in Hoenn. Well, Ash and May should come back later today, she told him, and I'll confront them then. You don't have to be here with me if you can't handle it. Thank you, Misty, he cried, hugging her. I knew that Kanto's gym leaders would be upstanding enough to help me. In the back of his mind, he thought, hook, line, and sucker. Oh boy. Yep, he's doing his thing. Sorry, I had to hydrate before I dehydrated. Yeah, so Harley's up to his no good tricks again. That booger! What are we gonna do with him? Anyway, Chapter 13, Kareem. Ash walked through the bustling streets of Cerulean, looking for the store he had seen in the phone book. It claimed itself a small store that carried the hot accessories that everyone wants. He cringed at the description. You can only imagine what the store looked like. Imagine it had neon lights set up on a display right in the door. All the walls would be painted black, and you'd be hard to press to find an angle you could look in the store without seeing some form of perverseness or profanity. He always avoided even looking at stores like that as he walked by. Pika, small Pokemon called as he plotted behind his trainer, asking something like, "Why are you trying to keep your injuries a secret from Misty anyway?" I didn't want her to worry about me, Pikachu, he explained to his partner. If Misty knew, she'd tell Mom, and then Mom would never leave me alone. She already worries about me. I don't need to tell her that I'm gotten hurt by my own Pokemon. Pikachu sighed, conceding the battle. He knew Ash would have to tell everyone eventually. The Pokemon hopped onto Ash's back and stood on his backpack, trying not to hurt the boy's shoulders. He stepped around a corner and saw a small building. He peered at the letters at the side and glanced down at the paper, noting that the address was the same as what he was given in the phone book. The wooden frame of the building was not the image Ash created for himself in his imagination. It looked like it needed a new coat of the pea soup green paint that it had on it, which had also been chipping away over the years, and the sign was not neon lights, but wooden and painted itself. A picture of a Vaporeon with a bright purple ribbon was dotted on the sign, with the words "Hip Threads" written in a yellow cursive font. The sign was worn, paint chipping all over the picture. A small sign on the green door noted they were open, however. He uneasily walked up to the door, turned the knob, and stepped inside. He heard a bell ringing. Upon stepping aside, he saw that the building was faring much better than was outside. Walls were painted a pale blue, with racks of clothing sitting in the rear left-hand corner of the store from the direction Ash was facing. Opposite the closing racks, in the far right-hand corner of the store, was a middle-aged woman, her dark blue hair done up in a bun, bifocal glasses sitting across her face. She smiled as she polished a gleaming golden pocket watch, the sunlight reflecting off of it and onto her clothes. She wore a plain brown dress with a white apron tied around her waist. Behind the woman in the clothing racks was the closed oaken door. The other half of the building must be where she lives, he thought. He walked up to the woman and began to speak. She looked up and almost dropped the watch in surprise. "Are you okay, miss?" he asked her. "Mrs.," she corrected him, showing off a silver wedding band. "And I'm okay. Just look familiar, that's all." She closed her gray eyes and shook her head. "How can I help you, sir?" "Well, I was actually coming here to buy something for a friend of mine," he said. "You see," he said, placing his pack on the table and zipping it, "my friend and I were out in the wilderness recently, and I got cut pretty bad." He pulled May's torn bandana out of his bag and was stained with his blood, but Ash thought of the caring girl who had destroyed it for him. He placed the halves on the table and continued. She had to tear her bandana up to damage me. Anyways, I was wondering if you had something about the same size. He tried to place the tears alongside each other so the one could get a good idea. She shifted her glasses, staring at the material. I think we have something like that, she said, stepping out from behind the counter. Her heeled shoes clicked as she walked around the store. And in the front, right behind the dusty windows, was a hat rack. Ash glanced across it and saw hats from sports teams like the Electabuzz and Starmie sitting among a few headbands and berets. She reached up and pulled out a single green headband. The pattern was similar to May's red bandana, but the white Pokeball pattern was in a different spot. She walked up to the counter and started tapping buttons on the cash register. The antiquated machine read 13,700 Pokédollars is the price for the bandana. Ash thought that such a simple piece of cloth shouldn't have cost so much, but he laughed it off, reminding himself how little he knew of fashion. Fun fact, the original story said $15, but I adjusted it for inflation and converted it to Pokédollars. Because, I mean, that's the currency that they would be using. Ash thought that such a simple piece of cloth shouldn't cost so much, but he laughed it off, reminding himself how little he knew of fashion. He dug into his pocket and pulled out the money. She placed bandana thoughtfully in a box, holding it gently, and handed the small box to the boy in exchange for the money he held in his hand. Cash register's bell rang out in the quiet store and startled the young trainer. He smiled as she handed him the box. "Thank you, ma'am," he said to her. "Pika!" the electric type added, smiling. Suddenly, his ears twitched, and he looked to the back door. It had opened with a set of blue eyes gleaming through the small opening. The woman looked back at the door, a hint of fear on her face. The door slammed. Oh gosh, hold on, I need to find it. I need to find another one, hold on. Okay, this is awkward. This is awkward. This is super awkward. The video that had the music I wanted to switch to was taken down, so, But it's okay. I found an alternative. Here we go. The door slammed open, shaking the store. A young girl, looking much like a Nurse Joy, stood in the doorway. Her statue, one could say, could be considered short. She looked about even a max, maybe shorter, wearing a small blue dress with tiny black dress shoes. Her dark blue hair was in braided ponytails lying down her back, but her blue eyes and facial features obviously matched those of the famed family of the Pokemon nurses. "It's you!" she exclaimed, pointing at Ash. "Oh, I can't believe it!" The girl bounced up and down and looked at his face closer. "It really is you!" Ash backed away. "Do I know you?" "No, but I know you!" The small girl jumped up and down excitedly. "I'm Cindy, your #1 fan!" Ash looked surprised. "You're my fan?" The girl nodded, furiously. "I've been following your exploits ever since I saw you back in the Indigo League! You were so cool! In your first Indigo League competition, you got top 16! She squealed with delight and then frowned. "I bet you would have won if your Charizard would have obeyed you. That really sucked." "Cindy!" The woman stomped over to Cindy and grabbed the girl by the ear. "What have I told you about that language?" "Ow! Ow! Ow! Ow!" The girl cried. "Ow! Sorry, Mom! I won't do it again, please!" The woman let go of her daughter's ear and looked at her through her glasses. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean for you to know," she said, bowing respectfully. "What do you mean?" "Let me introduce myself," she began. "My name is Rain, and the child here is my daughter, Cindy. Ever since we saw you live in the Indigo Pokemon League, she's been a fan of yours. And then I read in the paper that you beat Drake, the leader of the Orange Crew!" Cindy was absolutely ecstatic. "And your Pikachu was the one to knock out his Dragonite!" Her eyes looked up to see the yellow paws clinging tightly around his head. Is that your Pikachu?" she asked. Pikachu hopped down and walked up to the girl. At the sight of the Pokemon, Cindy began to shed tears of joy. She ran up to him, picked him up, embracing the mouse Pokemon in a hug. "It is!" She laughed, smiled. "It really is Ash's Pikachu!" She danced around with this Pokemon for a moment, while Pikachu wriggled out of her grip and began to lie on her head. Cindy laughed as the Pokemon's warm body heated her head. After that, she followed your progress on the internet, always wanting to hear more of what you'd been doing, Rain continued. She followed your exploits around Johto, and for her 7th birthday, her father and I took her to the Johto League Silver Conference. You were awesome there, Ash! Cindy hugged his leg with Pikachu still perched precariously on her head. You got top 8, beating a lot of good trainers. You even beat Gary Oak, grandson of the famous professional Samuel Oak. She nuzzled his leg and then got a depressed look on her face. Then Harrison and his Blaziken, she added, mocking Blaziken in her voice. And then Harrison and his Blaziken knocked you out in the next round. I'm glad that guy got was coming to him, losing right after he beat you. Well, actually, Ash said, prying her from his leg and kneeled to face her. I learned a lot from battle with Harrison. If it wasn't for beating him, I would never have gone to the Hoenn region. I had a lot of good friends there and caught some amazing Pokemon. Yeah, but I wish you could win a big tournament someday, Cindy said dejectedly, so everyone else can see how great you are. As flattered as he was to meet a fan, however, he found the sudden influx of attention to be a bit much and was conscious of the rapidly expiring shelf life of his cover story. Well, it's been great meeting you, he told them, backing out of the store, carefully. It's been great meeting you too, Cindy waved to him. If you're ever nearby, you can come and visit. You know where to find us, Rain bowed respectfully to him. Ash walked out the door and began to walk down the street. Pikachu hastily ran through the door himself as it was closing and leapt onto his back. He decided now would be a good time as any to go to the ice cream parlor. He had hoped May wouldn't beat him from there. He didn't need to look more suspicious than he already did. May walked out of a pharmacy, resupplied and ready for sweets. She turned down the road to the ice cream parlor near the park. The building was made of brick and looked rather new. She knew she would have to wait for him to show up, but she would rather wait in an air-conditioned building. He's probably off watching a Pokémon or something, she said, laughing to herself. She opened the revolving door and was surprised at what she saw. Oh boy. Okay, here we go. Oh boy. You know what that means. Fish! The floor was black and white in a checkerboard pattern. Around the building, there sat tables of varying sizes and shapes. Cushioned booths for two lined the walls with round tables at each corner, presumably for parties or family outings. But that wasn't the surprising part. The surprising part came when she saw who was working at the counter. A man with blue hair was adjusting the paper hat on his head, trying to look professional. Stood standing behind the counter. A woman with long red hair tirelessly cleaned the ice cream dispensing machine. And a small feline Pokemon scrubbed under the tables around the room with a small rag. Oh, you've got to be kidding me, May exclaimed, getting the attention of the familiar trio. They all looked up and saw the girl. And all of them screamed in surprise. What are you guys doing here? Instead of if you want ice cream, we won't give you trouble, the woman began. Instead of a single scoop, why not try a double? A sweet taste as old as the galaxy. Sent here to fulfill your tummy. Wait, I'm not ready yet! To denounce the evils of low-quality treats, to extend our reach to delicious sweets. Jesse, James, and the author to out! Whenever you want some after lots of hard labor, Team Creamer will be there with the new ice cream flavor! Wah, Buffett! Team Creamer? May could barely contain her laughter. What are you guys up to? Meowth. James turned to his Pokemon part. You better explain. Jesse and I need to stay at our posts. Meowth and May walked over into a corner booth. She sat down and scooted over, making room for Meowth to sit. Wait a minute. I opened the wrong tab. Oopsie poopsie. The cat Pokemon began to tell the story. You see, after our wheezing Ameca was destroyed, we were blasted off to land in Cerulean City. We tried to call the boss to ask him for more money, but he wouldn't give us any. We used all the money on the wheezing Ameca. We even drained the food budget. Without any money, we wouldn't be able to eat. We went down on luck when the guy who runs this joint needed some new employees. He agreed to hire us and give us our first week's pay up front. And of course, he got us to sign a contract. He did a background check on Jesse and James, but thankfully we got off clean enough to pass. But Cerulean is known for all the cops that roam around here. If it gets out that we're from Team Rocket, we'll be thrown in the slammer. I don't get it, May said, furrowing her brow. Why do you have to keep low profile? And Hoenn, you guys didn't seem to worry about being noticed. That's because Hoenn and Kanto have two different criminal elements. Team Rocket is known all throughout the Kanto region as the top overized crime ring. Our influence even extends to the Johto region. We're one of the most powerful criminal organizations on the planet. But then, he boasted at this one part, but then quickly became embarrassed. But we don't got anything going on in the Hoenn region. That's why no one thought we were bad guys until we showed up. Until we showed them. May hummed and thought. So, you guys needed the money to eat, so you all got a job here in the parlor. Meowth nodded. That's about the size of it. Please, we're begging you, don't toy us in. We'd rather work for money than be in jail. May nodded, a frown on her face. Fine, but you guys owe me. Meowth rubbed his paws together. All right, we owe you, thank you. He leapt into May's lap and gave her a hug. She then pried him off of her and held him by the fur of his back. I think we're close enough, she said. The bell on the door rang as a trainer with a Pikachu on his back walked through the door, immediately assessing the situation. Team Rock! He managed to get out before May covered his mouth. I'll explain what's going on. Meowth needs to get back to work. She guided Ash with his mouth covered in a booth made for two. She sat him down across from her and began to talk to him about the plight Team Rocket was in. He agreed to let them work, but added the same "you guys owe me" sentiment that May did. Meowth nodded, thankful that the twerps would keep their secret. They turned to Meowth and ordered some ice cream. May, of course, ordering a brown sundae, and Ash ordering a banana split. The Pokemon took their order and ran it up to his partners. They sat down, with Pikachu sitting on the table, waiting for his part of the banana split. Hey Ash, I wanted to ask you something, May said, breaking the silence. Ash looked up from something on his lap. What is it, May? He responded. When we were telling Misty how we ended up in Cerulean, why did you keep interrupting me? Sorry, I lost my spot. What do you mean? What do you mean? Ash said with a gulp. He hadn't known she had noticed. Well, when I was going to tell Missy that you got hurt, you interrupted me and started talking to us about us camping. You moved on to eating berries and then the center. The hurt in her voice was apparent. Why'd you try so hard to not let Missy know? She asked him. Well... And then you go on to get me to leave the room just so you all could have a private conversation. What was that about? May, are you jealous? A small blush came over her face. No, but I thought you said you liked me. Her face became embarrassed. And I didn't think that you could be interested in me and still have feelings for Misty. Is that what you're worried about? Wait. Oops, wrong one. Is that what you're worried about? He laughed. May looked up to his face. You're concerned about nothing. Huh? Then why all the secrecy? Ash blushed, facing his hand up behind his head. I guess I better come clean then, huh? May blinked. The reason I was talking to Misty alone was because I wanted to ask for advice. About what? About... He turned bright red for the first time since he admitted. About love. I know that I'm no good at being romantic, so I asked Misty for help. She's the one who convinced me to tell you. Ash recounted the conversations with Misty about love to May. He told her about her meeting after the Hoenn League before she showed up in Kanto, and he also told her what he talked about when he sent her away. But why did you want to keep it a secret? So you would think all the sweet things I do would be my idea, he admitted. I thought if you knew I was asking for help, that it wouldn't mean as much. Okay, she said, and a bright smile crossed her face. So Ash, where's that new bandana you got for me? Ash realized he let the cat out of the bag from when he recounted his conversation. He reached into his lap and placed a small pale box in front of her. She opened it and took the green bandana out. They didn't have any red ones, he smiled, embarrassed. I was hoping you wouldn't mind green. Oh, it's so cute! She squealed. She took Ash's head off her head and tossed it to Pikachu. He placed the cloth on her head and began to tie it in the back. It really does look cute on her, he thought, not realizing what he was thinking. There's something I wanted to say, too. Yeah, I wanted to apologize. Now you have to apologize? She laughed. For what? When I told you how I felt, he began. He was interrupted by Meowth placing their ice creams and a bill in front of them. They thanked Meowth, who bowed and walked to take care of other patrons. When I told you how I felt about you, I don't really think I was ready, finished his thought. Hmm? She looked at him inquisitively, hot fudge, and wet topping on her cheeks. I was following Missy's advice to try to keep you with me. She told me not to let you get away, and I was kinda in a bind. I even stooped so long as to get Pikachu to spy on you. The mouse Pokemon gulped, his hands and face sticky with ice cream from Ash's banana split. Don't worry, Pikachu, she said, trying to calm him down. I already figured that Ash sent you to come spy on me. Pikachu, no, calm, continue to eat Ash's ice cream. Well, anyway, I wanted to apologize for that. Apology accepted, she said, beaming a smile at him. Oh, and May? What? She said, dropping the second half of her brownie back into the plastic bowl. Can we sleep separate tonight? I mean, I didn't really mean to fall asleep with you last night. That's just how it happened. What's wrong? Her eyes flickered, her spoon spitting in her mouth. Are you afraid I'll try something funny on you while you're sleeping? She asked him suggestively. The images from Ash's nightmare earlier that day came flying to his mind. Yes! He exclaimed. Well, kind of. That is... I don't think it'd be appropriate for us to start sleeping together. We're still young and not even officially a couple or anything yet. Calm down, you baby, she laughed. I was just kidding. I was actually thinking the same thing earlier today. I don't think it would look too good if Max and Brock came in during the night to see us sleeping together. Can I ask you something then? What now? Why did you sleep with me last night? She asked him, blushing over her empty ice cream bowl. I was trying to comfort you, I guess. He looked out the window absentmindedly. You seemed upset, and I know that you'd normally hang on Max when you'd be like that. I was just trying to help you feel better. Well, thank you, she commended him. You did a great job. Like I said, May, anytime. Chapter 14, Candidate. Ash and May stood up and walked toward the counter where cheerful James took the money for the ice cream, gave them their change, and bid them farewell as they walked out the door. After walking toward the Pokemon Center for a few minutes, May began to complain about the heat. Ash, can we go do something? Heat is killing me! Ash was glad to be wearing his hat again, although he thought it smelled like May's shampoo. I guess we could ask Missy if we go swimming in the gym pool, he thought out loud. Well, that's a great idea, Ash! May grabbed his arm and pulled him along. As Ash was being pulled along, he heard some ruffling in the bushes behind him. He turned his head, and the ruffling then ceased. The second time today, he felt as if he was being followed. May managed to drag him to the gym, stepping through the door. This time, no one was sitting at the counter. Hello? Ash called out. Are you here, Misty? Pikachu! The Pokemon put his words in. The Crimson-Head Gym Leader stomped into the entrance area. The fire in her eyes was unmistakable. You... What, Misty? You bat-faced weasel! Misty shouted at the girl as she brought her hand across the coordinator's face. May held her cheek, tears forming in her eyes. Misty! Ash grabbed her by the shoulders. What's gotten into you? I know what she's been doing to you, Ash. She shook free and faced down the other girl. The young coordinator held her face, tears streaming. What do you mean, Misty? She's been taking advantage of you! Misty turned to Ash, grabbed him by the collar. Ash shook himself free from May's grip. What do you mean? Ash's voice being really serious now. And why all the pressure against May? I know what she's been doing to you! She shouted at him. Misty turned to the girl who had been stunned in silence since the slapping. She's a two-faced, conniving, cruel monster! She shouted, pointing at her. May looked up at Misty, her eyes full of sadness and disbelief. Misty, the only one being two-faced right now is you, Ash said, pulling her back. He spun her around and glared intensely into her eyes. Now tell me what's going on. She's been hurting you, Ash! She shouted, anger and compassion in her voice. I can't stand to see my best friend like this! What do you mean? With that, Misty brought her hand down sharply onto Ash's right shoulder. The boy yelped out in pain and fell to his knees, his left hand gripping the point at which his hand hit him. Ow! Why'd you do that for? Show you how the injuries he's inflicted on you affect you! Pikachu leapt up from Ash's back to his defense. Pika! The normally friendly Pokemon stood his ground, sparks flying from his cheeks. I forgot to translate this part. But, oh, actually, no, that's just red text. Never mind, I thought that was purple. So I see you're in on this too, Pikachu. She looked down her nose at him. I'm surprised. I thought you'd be the one to help him against her, but I see you're just as weak-willed as he is. Misty, May spoke up. Stop! Just quit hurting your friends! Just give us a chance to explain! I give you a chance to charm your way back with lies. The voice from the pool room called out. Harley, with a stern and serious look on his face, stepped into the room. It's you! May screamed, her voice becoming hoarse from the crying. Her eyes widened, and her fist clenched. What have you been telling Misty? I've been telling her the truth, Harley said, avoiding his gaze from the tearful trainer. I told her all your dirty secrets about how you've been abusing poor Ash here. That's not true, Ash said, climbing to his feet. He's never laid a finger on me. Then how do you explain this? Harley shouted, producing a picture he had printing out from the internet. Man, Ash gasped at the picture of Ash being attacked by Torchic's Ember attack. How stupid paparazzi, May cursed them in her mind. The day they had journeyed into North Petalburg prior to Ash's 5th gym battle in Hoenn came to mind. Being giddy from all the praise she was getting, she accidentally had let Torchic burn Ash during the battle there against his Tailo. Conveniently for Harley, Ash's Tailo wasn't in the picture. I can explain! They screamed at them, her eyes running out of tears to produce. I think you've done enough, little girl, Misty pointed at her. I challenge you to a battle. May's eyes widened in shock. Misty began to walk up to the girl's face, but Pikachu jumped between them and let out a thundershock to separate them. He turned to face Misty, this time true anger across the electric type's face. What? May couldn't process anything fast enough. Misty, you gotta believe us, Ash turned to her, grabbing her arm. Harley's just a big liar. He's got a vendetta against May and is just trying to get you to turn on her. Ash, I can't believe you. She pulled her arm out of Ash's hand. You stand with this witch even after she had done all these things to you? She pushed him back to the ground, her anger getting out of control. You leave him alone, May shouted, slapping Misty across the face. He's done nothing to you but try to reason with you, and you have the nerve to hurt him? Her nearly ever-present tears had returned. Her breathing was rapid through her clenched teeth. I accept your challenge! Good, as he said, leering at her. It'll be a one-on-one battle, to be held 3 days from now, the day after Brock and Max get here. I want them to see it. If I win, then you have to go into complete detail on the speaker and cerulean gym as to your relationship with Ash. And if we win, Ash put himself back to his feet, glaring angrily at Misty. You have to give us some compensation. What you did to her just now is completely out of order for a gym leader to do. I don't know what Harley said to you, but if you take his word above your friends, then you must have hit a new low. Ash, you're too proud for your own good, she said to him sternly. Why don't you come clean? She's been attacking you with your Pokemon. Why don't you just let your pride go and tell us what she's been doing to you? That's it. Ash could no longer stand it. I challenge you to this battle as well. Make it a tag battle. Misty smirked. Good. That way I can humiliate you both, and you both have to admit what's been going on. How about we add one more specification? Harley asked, approaching the group. Let's make this a contest battle. I'll be Misty's partner, of course. Certainly he wanted the best man in a battle that put her integrity on the line, just so he could strip it away. Fine with me, Ash snarled back at him. He then took the distressed May by the arm and began leading her out. Come on, May. You can tell we're not wanted around. Pikachu left in May's arms, trying to comfort the girl. She could only cry as Ash took her out of the gym with him. Don't you bother coming back to the gym, Ash, Misty shouted to the leaving trainer. You're both banned from the Cerulean Gym from now on, until the day we battle. And make sure you watch the news tonight. I'm sure you'll find it interesting. Ash heard these words as he left the gym, the doors automatically closing behind him. May cried into Pikachu's soft fur. Harley watched with utmost satisfaction. May was torn up that Missy would turn so quickly, and she was even more deeply wounded when Missy took out her anger on Ash. The girl was reduced to tears more than once in this encounter. However, in order to make his vengeance complete, he'd have to defeat her in the coming battle. With Misty's help, that should be simple. Harley's perfect revenge is back on track! Here. They'd stepped on the grass outside the gym. May fell to her knees, crying loudly. It'll be alright, May, Ash said, placing his hand on her back, comforting her. All we have to do is win the battle 3 days from now. Oh yeah, I'm gonna kill him! I know, right? I'm gonna kill this man! I'll kill this mother... I wanna kill this mother hubber! All we have to do is win the battle 3 days from now. Stopped hitting the ground with her fist. Why did she say those terrible things? She reached for a rock on the ground and began to wind her arm back. I hate you, Missy! She shouted. She tried to throw the rock, but her arm was caught by Ash's hand. No, he calmly told her, gently rubbing her back. Let's not sink to Harley's level. Never say you hate anyone. You never know when they could become your friend. People look like Harley holds stupid grudges and never can let them go. That's a lesson he'll never understand. May can only sit there and cry, with Ash trying to comfort her. He looked back to the glass doors of the gym, but Misty and Harley had disappeared already. Well, I guess you've gotten yourself into trouble again. A familiar voice came up down the path leading from the gym. Ash and May looked up to see a familiar green-haired boy walking towards them. Drew, they both said, turning to him. May wiped the tears from her eyes and stood to face him. How'd you get back so quickly? Ash asked. I said it would take him and Brock about 3 days to arrive. Did you forget about my Flygon already, Ash? Drew asked him rhetorically. I rode him here. He can make pretty good time when he needs to. Really wore him out, though, so right now he's resting at the Pokemon Center. A look of concern then shot across his face. What happened in the gym? Why is May crying? I think we better find a more private place to talk about this, Ash commented. And I think I know just the place. He turned to the bushes and called out. All right, Cindy, come out of the bushes. Drew and May put a stunned look on their face as the small girl walked out from behind the bushes. How did you know I was here? She protested. You didn't make yourself very hidden very well, pointed out. Besides, blue hair sticks out a tongue among green bushes. The small girl became flushed and walked up to the trainers. Pikachu left her head. We're going to your house, Cindy. We can talk in private there. The girl nodded in agreement, taking the lead and guiding the trainers to a small clothing store in the outskirts of Cerulean City. Okay, I need to take a drink. Oh boy. Your Celix Noodle's mine, I'm gonna use it! Oh! I figured there should be like a stronger move than Bind now. Like maybe Hyper Beam? Can Celix learn Hyper Beam? Ah, sorry. I'm just so thirsty! Also, I need more drinking. So good. When they arrived, Rain led them to the living room behind the storefront. The room wasn't painted. The wooden board serving as the backdrop. A dusty window sat in the back of the room, the afternoon sun gleaming in. Ash sat on the couch in the middle of the room next to May, who sat next to Drew, who himself sat next to Cindy. Ash and May recounted their adventures when they were separated. When Ash was about to come up with a story as to how May's bandana got ripped, May halted him. No more lies, she said. Not when Harley is using them to use Misty as his tool. With that, Ash backed down. He let May tell the rest of the story at her leisure. May didn't tell the story in its entirety, however. She also left out many of the times she and Ash were close. Ash chuckled in the back of his head. She's probably worried about what Drew will think, he thought. He told himself he'd point out May's hypocrisy later. Drew thought for a moment, then turned to Ash. Well, I'll be willing to help you train for the contest battle, he said. Really? That'd be great! Thanks, Drew, May said. I knew we could count on you to help. Don't mention it, said, waving off the phrase. Start bright and early tomorrow. Okay, Ash nodded. I'm looking forward to it. Hey, Cindy spoke up, pointing at the small television she was watching. Misty's on TV! Sure enough, the Cerulean gym leader was holding a press conference in front of the gym. She stood alongside her sisters and Harley. Various flashes from a multitude of angles kept ballooning in her body. I've issued a challenge to a trainer by the name of May, a Pokemon coordinator from the Hoenn region, she announced. The news program cut to a picture of her, a profile shot taken during the Kanto Grand Festival. Misty continued to talk while the picture was on screen. I can't get into specifics as to why I must battle her, but I can tell you that it will be 3 days from today. It will be a tag battle between her and a very close friend of mine that has chosen to be with her rather than me. A picture of Ash from the footage shot before his battle with Tucker, the Dome Ace, and a Frontier Brain appeared on screen. It was a picture that had been taken during the press conference. May's face was unaltered. The ashes of Brock, Max, and Scott were blurred out. The footage changed back to Misty with her supporters in front of the gym. My partner will be this trainer, Harley. As she said this, Harley waved shyly at the camera. It will be a contest battle, with each trainer using one water-type Pokemon. Misty turned and began to walk into the gym. The reporters began to crowd the area, but Missy's sisters and Harley held them back. Please, Harley argued with them. Missy's been through a lot today. She's had to face some very ugly truths, and now she needs her rest. He managed to keep the reporters at bay long enough for Mystery to retreat into the gym. Missy's sisters began to distribute posters, hoping to hype up the battle and sell tickets. The screen had flickered back to the news anchor who had put in his opinion. What'd she do that for? Ash shouted. Are you trying to make us look like the bad guys? No, Drew said, looking at the screen. This is more Harley's style. I'll bet he convinced Misty that a large crowd would be there to see the humiliation. That just makes me hate Misty even more, Cindy shouted, shaking her fist at the picture of the gym leader that appeared on screen. Why don't you just tell her the truth about what happened? Rain asked, walking in from the kitchen. We tried, May explained, but I couldn't get her to listen to me. Well, that doesn't matter anymore, Ash said, standing up. Missy's thrown down the gauntlet, and now we have to clear ourselves by winning. We'll cover Harley's woe lies only by battling. He turned to May. Because it's a water-type battle, I'm using Corefish. May pulled a Pokeball from her belt. I guess that means I've got to use Squirtle, she said. With the news of this going around, it might be too dangerous for you to go back to the Pokemon Center, Drew said. You two better stay here. You're right, Ash said. But then he leapt up. Oh no! Useless might have reached Pallet Town by now! Do you think they'll even go to Pelibur to try to talk to my father? May asked. They might, Drew said, thinking. I'd better get going, turning the door. We're going to have an early day tomorrow. Hey, Drew, May spoke up. Can we talk for a bit? Sure, May, he said, leading her outside. Ash couldn't help but feel a pang of jealousy as they left the building, but Ash nevertheless followed Rain into the kitchen to help her fix dinner. Drew, May started. Thanks for agreeing to help Ash. He's never had a contest battle before, so this'll help him a lot. Don't mention it, May, Drew said, smiling at her. I'd really appreciate it if you came with us to watch. You might learn something yourself. He said, laughing at her expense. Hey, May smiled back at him. Who beat you in the Kanto Grand Festival? You only won because of the time limit, Drew sneered. Well, I was actually planning on it anyway. May turned from him and said matter-of-factly. May, Drew whispered to her. She turned to see a rose in her face. I missed you while you were gone, he said. I was worried that something bad might have happened to you. May took the rose out of Drew's hand and held it to her chest. She smelled it for a moment. You didn't have to worry about me, Drew, she said with a smile. I had Ash with me, and he made sure I was okay. But I could tell that he was getting injured by the way Swellow was grabbing him. I was worried that Ash wouldn't have been able to protect you. Yeah, I heard how worried you were when I called. Max told me that you'd been searching nearly all day and night for us. Honestly, May, he looked into her sapphire eyes with his emerald ones. I was only looking for you. He ran his fingers through May's locks and caressed the cheek that Missy had slapped earlier that day. May couldn't help but feel herself blush. He gently turned his head and kissed her on the cheek. And at that, May fell to her knees, unable to stand. I'll see you around, he told her, walking off. He looked back at the rose he gave her, seeing a small white note attached to it. She took it off and read it. I realize things may be hectic for you now. I'll wait for your answer until this mess is over with. With love, Drew. May folded the piece of paper and placed it in her pack. She stood up and brushed herself off and walked back inside, hoping no one saw the exchange between her and Drew. Unbeknownst to her, a pair of large dark eyes had seen it all. I don't think Gyarados definitely can. Okay, yes! Harley deserves a Gyarados Hyper Beam. And then maybe an Oblivion Wing. Smile. Smile. Oh boy. Chapter 15, Choices. And I should warn that this is perhaps my least favorite chapter in the story, simply because of the pacing. But I will do my best. I will do my best to make the pacing better. I just hope that my mouthfuls of jerky doesn't distract you, because oh my god, I am starving. I am feeling so peckish. Oh, jerky's so darn good, though. Okay, your Grotto will use prep displays after, then your John Doza will use body press, and then your Giratina will send to the reverse world. Okay. Yeah. Send to the distortion world. Isn't that where Cyrus ended up in the end of Platinum? Actually, I don't remember what his final fate was. I think that was it. Yeah, you can imagine, you just gotta be second on that lately. Yeah, I have been. It's the Adderall, man. The Adderall, like, suppresses my appetite a little bit. Alright. Awakening. Distortion World, yes. Yeah, of course, Aiden. I guess you're not the only one who knows Pokemon trivia. Well, that's real. You know a lot more than I do. Chapter 15, Choices. Pikachu! Ash called from another room. The Electrotype fell backwards from his window perch, landing on his back. The door next to him opened, and May stepped inside. She glanced over and saw the fallen Pokemon lying on his back. Hey, Pikachu, she laughed. What are you doing on the floor over here? She picked him up and held him in her arms. Pikachu cooed as May rubbed his head where he had landed. The coordinator walked into the back room to see Cindy watching television, blankly flipping through channels. She turned to her right as a delicious scent wafted into the room. She carried Pikachu over to the door and looked into the kitchen. The room was white, with blue tile on the floor with yellow and blue wallpaper. Wallpaper was old, as May could tell from it peeling in certain parts of the wall, mostly toward the ceiling. Hey, May, Ash said, smiling at the rhyme smiling at himself at the rhyme he came up with. The boy was setting pates at the table. Did Drew leave? Yeah, he said, her mind drifting back towards her confrontation with the charming boy. Oh. Ash looked down, thinking of a bowl he had sat down, returning it to the cupboard nearby a cooking rain. Are you ready to eat yet? Ash asked her. That's it, looks about done, she said, turning the heat off the pot. Cindy, supper's ready! The girl wandered back into the room, absently taking a chair close to the door she had just walked in from. Ash walked into the living room to obtain a fourth chair because the table in the kitchen only had 3 near it. It was a rectangular table, with 3 chairs on the left side, coming in from the living room. Ash sat his chair across from May, who sat the furthest from the door, with Rain and Cindy sitting in that order. Rain began to pour the stew she had made into the bowls of the table, and oh my god, this is making me hungry! After thanking her for feeding them, Ash and May began to eat their meal. Rain was a good cook. Her stew tasted great and filled the stomachs of the trainers very well. Cindy got a disgruntled look, however. Disgruntled look on her face, however, while Ash and May complimented the deliciousness of the meal. Mom, she asked, can we afford this? Hush, Cindy, she quieted her daughter. Don't talk about things like that in front of our guests. But Mom, Cindy said, becoming outraged. You know Dad's been late this week. If we all order food now, then what we have doesn't arrive until next week. Hush! Rain scolded her child. What's wrong? Ash said, having stopped eating. It's nothing, Rain said, trying to dismiss the issue. May, you're a Pokemon coordinator, right? How is that working for you? May gave it a moment to think. Well, I feel like I'm doing well, she said. I got to both the Grand Festivals I tried to enter. I even got a couple of rounds into them. But now that they're over, she said, sighing. I guess I don't really have a goal right now. I guess I'm glad that Harley made it a contest battle. Gives me a goal, even if it's just for a couple of days. Give me gym battles and league tournaments any day, Cindy scoffed. Contests are just hyped up beauty contests. With this, May quickly got offended. Hey, contests are just as hard as gym battles, if not harder. You have to plan instantly appeals, execute them flawlessly, then you have to battle with style in the second round. Neglecting any one part can make you end up in ruin. Hey, May, Ash laughed, trying to break the tension. Calm down. I know you try your hardest in the contest, and from what I can tell, they are anything but easy. Don't let it get under your skin. May took a deep breath. I've had a hard day today, said with a sigh. Cindy, nevertheless, was stunned by the sudden reprisal, and her facial expression shifted from dismissively smug to apologetic and curious. A few seconds of silence ensued before she apparently mustered up the courage to speak once more, this time with a tone far more diplomatic than the one she used prior. "Hey, Mom," she said, speaking up. "Can May sleep in my room with me tonight? Can May sleep in my room with me tonight?" "I suppose," Rain said, with an eyebrow raised. "But why? You just had a fight with her?" "Because I want to have some girl talk with her. I mean, she's the girl closest to Ash. I want to talk to someone who has the inside view of my hero like that." "Your hero?" May asked. "I'll explain." Cindy then stood on her chair, as if it were a soapbox, apparently. She talked about how she had first seen Ash in the Indigo League and then heard of him when he beat the leader of the Orange Crew. She told May about seeing Ash live in the Silver Conference. She talked about how she wanted to ask May what it was like at the Evergrande Conference. "I also went to see Ash live at the Battle Dome when he fought Tucker. I didn't realize we were in the same building, May. I want to hear about the rest of Ash's Battle Frontier matches." "Why can't I tell them?" Ash asked, feeling overshadowed. "You're too modest, Ash," Cindy told him. "You'd make it out to not be such a big deal, just like when you said you were glad to get eaten by Harrison and his stupid plays again." Cindy hopped off the chair and turned back to May. "You want to see my room?" she asked. "Sure." May laughed, standing up and followed the girl into the room and up the stairs. Ash turned to Pikachu, who had barely even eaten any of the Pokemon food Ash had set up for him. "Something up, buddy?" he asked. Pikachu just continued to stare at May until she disappeared from sight. He knew he would have to tell Ash before the day was over. It was his duty as his best friend to tell what happened, after all. After May disappeared, he turned his attention to his food. He was a hungry Pokemon, after all. May walked up the wooden stairs and turned right, following the younger girl. She stepped into the room before the junior could turn on the light. A quick click from the desk lamp on Cindy's desk, and the room was brightly illuminated. The room was painted with a faded pink paint and boasted a purple carpet. The bed had pink covers and a fluffy white pillow. Next to the bed, facing a window, was a small desk. Lots of drawing utensils were strewn across the room. A large bookcase sat opposite the bed on the right side, on the room's right side. Filling its shelves were many Pokemon dolls. "Pikachu, Pidgeotto, Butterfree," May began. She remembered hearing all these Pokemon before. "Oh, here's a Cyndaquil and a Totodile," she continued. "Here's a Trico, a Tailo, and a Corphish," she said, coming to realization. "These are all Ash's Pokemon." I could point out nearly every one of Ash's captures among the dolls. The only two missing were Sceptile and Ipom. I guess she doesn't know," May whispered to herself. To the left of the bookcase, away from the window, there are some newspaper clippings. "Local boy reaches top 16 in first league attempt. Ash does it again! Boy defeats leader in the Orange Crew. Local trainer show Palette Pride in Johto Silver Conference." May was amazed at all of these articles. Cindy had been following Ash's exploits for a long time. She almost missed the article of Ash losing in the Hoenn League. It was much smaller than the others. May then felt something rise in her throat. Ash had done so much, and he still hadn't reached his goal. And it seemed that a lot of people who cheered him on no longer cared about where he was or how well he did. When she reaches the point where she'd have been traveling just as long as Ash had been, will there still be people who cared about what she did? On the wall to the right of the bookcase were some very well done crayon drawings that Cindy hastily took down. "What are those?" May asked, trying to see the pictures. "Nothing," the girl stated as she began pulling them off the walls. Just then she dropped a piece of paper, which sailed lazily toward May's feet. She picked it up and looked at it. It featured a couple dancing, a boy with someone May could very easily identify. Dancing with the young black-haired man with unkempt hair was a girl who looked about May's age. Her long, dark blue hair gently fell along her back, her head resting against his chest. Before she could look any longer, Cindy snatched the picture out of her hands. "Don't be so nosy," she said, scowling. She quickly rolled out the paper with the others and slid them under her bed. May giggled. "You have a crush on Ash?" she asked. Cindy blushed. "So?" she asked. "It's not like you don't." Then it was May's turn to blush. "What? How do you know?" Cindy smiled. "Well, other than you just admitting it. I saw you both in the ice cream parlor, and I heard you whined into gonna do something for you." "Okay," May sat in the chair in front of Cindy's desk, now thoroughly out of little stuff to skitty back into the bag. Sat in the chair in front of Cindy's desk in resignation. I'll admit it to you, I like Ash. I knew it! Cindy glowed. I knew you did! Are you two gonna go steady? May looked up. What? You don't know the full situation, do you? What do you mean? Cindy was apparently dumbfounded. You like Ash, it's obvious he likes you. The way he jumps to your defense, I don't see the problem. Oh, there's this other guy. Is it that Drake guy? The one with the green hair? His name is Drew! May said, practically shouting. She realized what she did, and her face turned red as her blouse. I like him too. I'd help you, Cindy started. But you know who I think you should go with. You think I should go with Drew? He asked. Hell no! Girl cussed. Ash is much better than that shoe guy. But I thought you liked Ash. May furrowed her brown eyebrows. Why would you want me to be with him? I could never be with Ash. Cindy looked down. The age gap is too wide. Besides, I'm content being his fan. But you! She stood on the bed so she could reach May's shoulders. Ash has fallen in love with you, and you like him! You're living my dream! Yeah, but right now Ash and Drew seem to be pulling me into a nightmare, May said with a sigh. Well, tell me how you met Ash and Drew, Cindy said. Cindy then sat on the bed. May recounted the start of her adventure, meeting Ash and Pikachu, receiving her Torchic, teaming up with Max and Brock, becoming inspired to become a coordinator. She told Cindy briefly of the adventures she and Ash had in Hoenn. He told her about Ash's first 2 gym battles, when they arrived in Slateport, and when May bet Drew in her first Pokemon contest. May talked about her defeat, and how they met several times during her Hoenn adventures. She told Cindy about how she lost in the Grand Festival in Drew's Rose. Drew sounds like a playboy, Cindy spoke up. I think he's only giving the roses seem like the romantic type. But if you were a boy, he'd treat you just as badly as Harley does now, if not worse. This was the second time this thought entered May's head. Drew isn't like that, is he? He'd have helped me even if I was a boy, right? And from what I can tell, Ash treats everyone with respect and kindness, unless they show him that they don't deserve it by doing bad stuff. May thought about this as well for a moment. Ash was generally pretty easygoing, and would go out of his way to help just about anyone. Only when faced by criminals like the Rockets, the Aquas, or the Magmas did Ash act partially to them. It was only after they had done something first. I just don't know. They turned to the window. She looked at the stars and thought of Ash and Drew. I think we need to head to sleep soon, she commented. It's going to be an early day tomorrow. Meanwhile, Ash was helping Rain clean up after supper. He washed the bowls out while Rain moved the uneaten portion of the stew into plastic containers to eat his leftovers. She handed them to Ash, who opened up the refrigerator and placed them inside. Hey, Rain, Ash began. What was Cindy talking about? I'll tell you, Ash. My husband works quite a few ways from here. He rarely ever has a time where he can come home. His work keeps him away. But always manages to send his check home to us. Our store doesn't get much business, so we rely on him sending us that money. She looked out the window to the starry sky. For the last few weeks, his checks have been coming later and later. Cindy and I are having a hard time getting by. I don't know how much longer we can keep the store open. All you need is some publicity, Ash stated. If you could somehow harness the publicity that Missy's sisters are stirring up for the battle, we may be able to get people to learn about your store. How do we do that? I haven't thought that far ahead yet. Rain smiled and shook her head. You should get some sleep. Rain placed her hand on Ash's shoulder. You're gonna have an early day tomorrow. Yeah. Ash looked down and agreed. Thank you for taking May and me in. It's alright, Rain reassured him. I know that you'll help us if you can. Ash took out his sleeping bag and fashioned into a blanket like he had done so 2 nights ago. He took off his sweatshirt and left it hanging on the chair he brought back into the living room. Hey, Pikachu! Ash shouted. He heard his friend scampering down the stairs into the room. It's getting late. Gotta be getting to sleep. Pika, the Pokemon interrupted. He had to tell him. What is it? Ash was getting worried about his tone. Ash, Drew kissed May earlier, Pikachu exclaimed in, his trademark Pikachu speak. What? Ash shouted in a hushed tone. Are you sure? Did you see? Pika, he nodded. Ash growled. That Drew. What's he up to? He sat down and looked at Pikachu. I wonder, is he really going to help me, or is he going to get revenge for beating him the other day? Pikachu shrugged. He hopped into Ash's arms, snuggling close to the trainer. I don't know who I can rely on. I don't know who I can rely on now, Pikachu. Ash confided. Misty's turn on us. Drew's trying to use us. Oh, Brock and Max will be on our side. I wonder how everyone in Pallet is handling this. With this thought, Ash closed his eyes, fading into sleep. Ash! A woman in a pink blouse and blue skirt ran up to him, pulling him close. Mom? Ash was confused. What are you doing here? We heard what nasty things Misty's been saying about you, Ash's mother cried in her son's hair. We've come to take you home, away from this place. What? Ash was even more confused now. From up the stairs, a man with short hair held May under his arms, easily holding her restrained under one. He wore a brown shirt and black jeans. May! Ash called to her. Ash, help! She said, struggling to helplessly. The man walked up to Ash. His mother had disappeared. I'm taking May back to Hoenn. But why? Ash asked. I've heard the things you've done with her. I can't believe you would do such a thing. His dark eyes focused on Ash and Hank. To think I trusted you. He pulled his free arm back and punched Ash in the face. Ash was jolted awake from the events in his nightmares. He looked at the ceiling for a moment, and then at the old VCR sitting atop the small television. The LCD displayed 3:03. Oh boy, 3 a.m.! Turning his head back to the ceiling, he closed his eyes and tried to drift back to sleep. Unfortunately for him, his dreams would continue to be riddled with nightmares. Unlike a certain coordinators. Good evening, milady. A boy with black, messy hair bowed before her. As he stood to face her, A took notice of the neat tuxedo that the boy wore. Her eyes looked up to see the smiling face of her friend. Ash! A stood up. She at that point noticed she was wearing a dress. It was much similar to the one she had worn shortly before her adventure with Lucario and the Reggie Pokemon, except that all the red was replaced with green, taking note from her new bandana. What's going on? She asked. Ash's hand extended. I'm asking you to dance, he said. Of course I'd like to dance! May blushed, taking his hand. He led her to the middle of the ballroom. He placed his hands on her waist, and she tossed her arms onto his shoulders. Together they began to dance. Ash led May into it, gazing lovingly into her sapphire eyes. May gazed back into his auburn eyes, while something began to well up inside her. Before she could act, though, a familiar voice called to them. May I cut in? Drew Ash asked, also dressed very neatly in a tuxedo. Of course! Ash said with a smile, handing him May's hand. Drew placed his hands on May's waist, just as Ash had done, and they began to dance. His emerald eyes captivated her, keeping her from looking anywhere else as they spun. Drew stopped dancing with her, and Ash walked up to the pair. I love you, May, the boys said simultaneously. They puckered their lips and each planted a sweet, soft kiss on the girl's cheeks. May looked up from her sleeping bag on the floor to see the bright window. The sun had risen on the other side of the building, but it was already daybreak. She stood up and began to get dressed. The first day of training had begun. And I think that's going to be it for tonight. It has been 3 hours. I'm still stuffing my face full of jerky. So I need to have something more substantial. And I need to bug Pika to play Kingdom Hearts more. Yeah, we made quite a bit of progress on today. We read like maybe 9 or 10 chapters out of 35. That's really good. Oh my goodness. That's really good. The progress that we're making here. I don't think I'm gonna raid out today though. I'm just gonna end things off here. Thank you for showing up to watch, y'all. Especially you, Aiden. Oh, I love reading the story. I love it, man. And I hope it's been enjoyable. Last the stream at night, my guy. I'm loving the story, even though it's present because I'm alone. Yeah, I know the feel. Have a good rest of your night. Yeah, you too, you too. Alright, so next time I imagine will be 3 houses, because I do need to get back to doing Blue Lion, so then we can finally start doing war crimes, as promised. Yeah! Thank you, Aiden. You're awesome. Alright, but until then, I will see y'all next time. Have a great night.
Sleep well, everybody. Take care.